a magic blade worth hundreds of millions, rendered useless by my insane luck stat. Unaware of the situation, Yongsha and Suho tried to stop Seonga's relentless pursuit. Her mana ignited into flames, incinerating Yangsha's whip. As the whip turned to ash, Jane launched a sword ambush. Both unleashed their full power, clashing violently within the chaotic ballroom. Charging her magic, Seonga blasted Jane away, shattering her high-tier equipment instantly. While Jane was dazed, Seonga lunged forward to deliver a lethal finishing blow. Suho blocked the strike just in time. Seonga fumed, while Jane trembled in terror. Their battle was injuring innocent guests. Suho had to stop the collateral damage. Seonga refused to back down from this rare chance. Since Suho wouldn't move, she used brute force, kicking Suho away. But when she turned, Jane had vanished. Seonga was livid, while the escaping Jane waved a mocking goodbye. Her joy was short-lived, as a sinister demonic aura surged from behind her. In a sudden twist, a monstrous demonic claw snatched Hamar's ring away. It was Silas of the Evil Society. I can't let a demon take that ring. Meanwhile, Chai Neon was completely lost despite following her high-tech watch map. She wanted to sue the manufacturer until realizing it was her father's own company. She tried contacting Yangsha, but her calls and messages went completely unanswered. Back in the ballroom, panic erupted at the demon's arrival. She faced Silas, unleashing her full mana and demanding he drop the ring immediately. Silas just mocked her, claiming such treasure belongs only to the Evil Society. Using clairvoyance, I realized they couldn't reclaim the ring even if they teamed up. Luckily, I prepared for the worst. I shaped my ether into a long rope. With a swift spin, I launched it toward the ring in the demon's hand. Silas was too focused on Seonga to notice my ambush from the shadows. My ether rope snatched the ring. Silas turned, only to see Seonga attacking. They were locked in combat. I knew they wouldn't be able to chase me now. As long as I take the ring, the original plot won't be derailed. Suddenly, a massive mana surge hit. The castle wall beneath me exploded violently. Thanks to my heightened senses, I escaped the terrifying blast completely unscathed. But a second demon blocked my path. 2 of them in one day. He introduced himself as Sidious of the Evil Society. Sidious. That wasn't happening. I hid the ring, and Sidious drew his weapon immediately. Channeling his dark mana, a gleaming laser blade manifested in his hand. Without a word of warning, he swung the lethal sword directly at me. The destruction was insane. Even the lingering aura of the strike felt deathly. He boasted about his weapon, a special gear piece worth hundreds of millions. The stronger the user's mana, the more powerful this magic blade becomes. Since demons gain massive mana from contracts, he was the perfect match. If I can break his sword, I can win. But his assault was relentless. I struggled to dodge, taking injuries while desperately trying to buy some time. I offered to surrender the ring, but Sidious knew he could just kill me. He saw through my stalling tactics and didn't care about my weak resistance. Compared to the others, I seemed pathetic. He wondered why I only held a pistol. Why did I dare to challenge a djinn? He didn't waste any more words, preparing a lethal finishing blow. Suddenly, Sidious's mana sword flickered and died. The silence was deafening as he desperately tried to restart it. He couldn't comprehend what was happening. Glancing at my system window, I calmly told him it was over. His sword wouldn't be activating again today. The notification on my screen was crystal clear. My luck had triggered, successfully weakening his mana sword. Sidious was suffering from a terminal case of misfortune. He dismissed it as a gear glitch, claiming he could still kill me. I simply replied that things had changed. Immediately, I channeled all the mana from my stigma into light bullets. My handgun instantly transformed into a powerful shotgun. Realizing the danger, but his desperate charge was exactly what I wanted. A massive gunshot echoed through the air. With that single blast, the curtain fell on our battle. Elsewhere, unable to find her way back, Chai Neon finally contacted Kim Suho and the others for help. She noticed a fleet of police cars, all racing toward a single location. She had no idea what was happening, and strangely, not a single person had replied to her messages. Sadness washed over her, but she quickly scolded herself. When did she become so dependent on others? As she sat there moping, she turned her head and was startled to find me sitting right beside her. Chainaeon jumped in shock, wondering how I got there. But my body was completely spent, and I had no strength left. I managed to tell her I didn't feel well before the exhaustion took over, and I collapsed on the spot. She cried out, asking what happened, but I was deep in a dream. In my sleep, I returned to a snowy exam day. I saw my parents waiting for me in the cold. I had missed them so much. When I finally woke up, my eyes were blurred with tears. Looking around, I realized I hadn't returned home after all. I wondered where I was. It seemed a simple herb had put me into a state of suspended animation. Nothing escapes my knowledge, as the author. I had exhausted every drop of energy defeating that djinn. Between my injuries and the fatigue, I had passed out the moment I found Chainaeon. Now, I woke up in a massive bed. Just then, Kim Soo-ho and the others pushed the door open. Chainaeon looked relieved but annoyed to see me awake. Still looking listless, I listened as she complained about how much effort it took to carry me to the mansion. She suddenly noticed the tear tracks on my face and couldn't help but burst into laughter. She mocked me, assuming I had cried from the pain of my wounds. As she kept teasing, the hour grew late. Kim Soo-ho eventually persuaded her to leave and rest. Finally, I could ask the resident doctor, Natasha. This was a wealthy man's estate, and I was currently sharing a room with Kim Soo. Checking the time, I let out a breath of relief. The planned assassination of the tycoon was about to begin. I had woken up just in time. After the girls left, Kim Soo-ho sat down and began peeling some apples for me. I checked my smartwatch and saw news reports about the djinn attack, featuring Kim Soo-ho and his team. Ultimately, Saharazad and the overseer had escaped. I wanted to ask Soo-ho for the specific details of the fight. He was hesitant to speak, but assured me everyone was fine. The djinns fled the moment the heroes arrived. He handed me a slice of apple, but as I took it, I noticed his hands. They were covered in fresh scars. I warned him to take care of himself, reminding him that he was the protagonist. He couldn't afford to be seriously hurt. He had held his own against a murderous Yasante today. If the djinns hadn't intervened, he might have been gravely injured. Soo-ho was a truly noble protagonist. However, the plot was now being twisted by another author. I worried if he could survive this chaotic, distorted narrative. Deep down, I also wondered if Kim Soo-ho was the key to me ever returning to my original world. Soo-ho disagreed with my words. In his eyes, if he was a protagonist, then I was one too. He believed everyone was the hero of their own story. His response caught me off guard. It was such a typical Kim Soo-ho thing to say. He then mentioned the report I wrote for Chainaeon. He felt I was too harsh. He believed telling someone to give up on their path was wrong, regardless of their choices. My answer was firm. If a path leads straight to a dead end, I refuse to offer false encouragement. I told him plainly that his habit of always humoring people wouldn't solve the real problems ahead. If Chainaeon persists only to fail, no one can bear that heavy responsibility. Soo-ho questioned me, how could I be so certain? I calmly replied that I've watched her longer than anyone, so I know her best. Soo-ho was stunned, but a sudden noise outside the room cut our conversation short. Activating my clairvoyance, I realized Nahon had been eavesdropping on us. The whole time, she fled in a panic, her face flushed red, confused by my sudden declaration. Even the sleeping Yonha was startled awake. Finding nothing wrong, they both drifted back to sleep. Under her covers, Nahon tried to convince herself to just ignore my words. Yet, my voice haunted her, thoughts until a piercing blood-curdling scream shattered the night. Yongha thought it was Nahon, but the horror was actually unfolding on the ground floor. A maid discovered the master, Bethel, murdered. The students rushed out in total shock. Realizing the commotion was downstairs, Kim Soo-ho leapt directly over the railing to investigate. He kicked open the master bedroom door, only to be met by a gruesome sight. Bethel lay there, his blood drenching the entire bed. As everyone mourned, Natasha stepped forward. Her diagnosis was grim. Due to massive blood loss from an abdominal wound, Bethel was dead. The servants wailed, claiming their master's old enemies had finally struck him down. Amidst the mourning, Natasha urged everyone to return to their rooms and wait for police. Suddenly, I flipped the lights on. Blinding brightness filled the room, leaving everyone utterly confused. I paced slowly toward Bethel's bedside. Natasha hissed at me not to disturb the scene. Without a word, I drew my handgun. Suho and the others stared, convinced I'd lost it. Ignoring the stares, I declared coldly that Natasha was lying. Betho was still very much alive. In the original novel, the villain Belvert used a faked death to escape his assassins. He was a minor antagonist I'd added on a whim, so his escape details were vague. With the plot already warped, I decided to eliminate this threat right here and now. I turned to the shocked crowd and stated clearly, Bethel is currently in a trance. Natasha fired back, arguing that her medical expertise. I began listing the inconsistencies. First, the wounds were too shallow for a real assassination. Second, the blood was excessive. For a minor heart graze, there was far too much gore. Then, I played my final card. I pulled up the wanted list and showed them the face of the swindler Bel. Don't they look identical? Natasha panicked, frantically calling for the police and an ambulance. She tried to stall, saying, "We must wait for experts." I didn't give her a choice. I leveled my gun at Bethel's chest. The metallic click of the hammer echoed through the room. The students gasped in horror as I began a cold, 3-second countdown. Since Hay's already dead, one more bullet shouldn't hurt. Natasha screamed for someone to stop me. I reached the count of 1. Just as I pulled the trigger, Natasha lost it. She threw herself over Bethel, shielding him. She begged for mercy, revealing Bethel was her father. The room was silent. The students realized Natasha's behavior had been suspicious all along. The butler tried to slip away, but I fired a warning shot. I ordered him to call the heroes immediately. We had a high-profile fugitive in custody. Once the heroes arrived, Bethel's identity was confirmed. Natasha was also hauled away in cuffs. The entire assassination was a scripted farce staged by the father-daughter duo. Belvert was wanted across the Northwest and used the Cube students as his perfect alibi. Natasha had stolen rare drugs from Cube to perfectly mimic a state of death. They'd even bribed the local police to swap the body later. A perfect plan until I interfered. Bessel, as long as those students from the Cube give their statements, the police will be absolutely convinced of his death. He had planned to operate from the shadows under a new identity. I had also just completed my client's request. To build a name for myself, I even waived the entire fee. Thanks to that employer, my agency's credibility has skyrocketed. Once the dust finally settled, You? Yonha wondered. If I was some kind of Sherlock Holmes? She truly believed I had what it takes to run a top-tier detective agency. But her biggest mystery was how I could memorize so many criminal faces. My expression turned cold as I responded. I told her it was simply a product of my upbringing. That's when it hit me I actually knew nothing about Kim Chun-dong's family history. Meanwhile, on the other side, Salison was busy delivering a report to the high-ranking Kim Hak. He revealed that a stranger in a leper mask had stolen the ring and that Schindler had been completely defeated. Kim Hakpyo immediately ordered an investigation into my identity. Just as Silison let his guard down, Kim Hakpyo's temper flared. He was furious that Silison's current state practically screamed he was a djinn. He absolutely loathed being associated with that title. Silison scrambled to revert to his original form. Finally, Kim Hakpyo brought up the progress on the Magic Sword project. Little did they know, that very sword was already in my possession. Once our business was concluded, we teleported back to the academy. The sword was useless to me for now, so I tucked it away. Next, I needed to inspect the ring's hidden potential. Normally, it requires a massive amount of mana, but I could simply use my SP to rewrite its settings. After spending SP to awaken the Ring of Karma, its hidden stats were revealed, significantly boosting the wearer's intelligence and magical power. Best of all, it wasn't a bound item, meaning I could give it to someone else. Since my own mana reserves were lacking, it would be far more devastating in the hands of Kim Suho or Chai Naeunus. Her raw mana capacity even exceeded Su. Lately, I had noticed my own stats steadily climbing as well. The gains were modest, but luckily, my core talents had leveled up. However, I felt like I was finally hitting a wall in my progression. From here on, it would take far greater effort to shatter my limits and reach the next stage of power. At least, with my current skill, I was confident I could win the archery bet against Chai Naeun. Right then, I remembered my goal to uncover Kim Chun-dong's past. My co-author wouldn't have left a character's history completely empty. Even if he was just a background character in my novel, in this reality, he was clearly a top-tier talent. His parents were likely influential figures. I searched the Purple Banquet and found an agency run by the legendary investigator. He was the best in the business, capable of unearthing anyone's secrets. Though his fees were astronomically high. Just as I was about to place the request, I realized I was broke thanks to my recent heavy investments. I had no choice but to wait until I was flush with cash again. Meanwhile, Evandel began shaking, excitedly. At that same moment, Yu Yonha was making a call to her uncle. It seemed she was equally obsessed with my mysterious past. She decided to have him look into me. With my book of truth, which could foresee everything, finding even the most elusive criminals was easy. It had already helped me clear my second commission. After returning to school, Yu Yonha couldn't stop thinking about what I had said. She immediately set out to dig into my history, calling upon her uncle's expertise. Her reason for doing so was simple. During our journey back, she had begun piecing together a theory. She suspected the only reason I memorized so many criminal faces was because of a traumatic past, involving an unknown culprit. She believed I had memorized the entire wanted list to find them. Since I grew up in an orphanage, she assumed my parents must have been murdered. Even though it was just a guess, Yu Yonha couldn't shake the feeling. If she could help me uncover the truth behind my past, her chances of recruiting me into her guild would skyrocket. On the other end of the line, Eugene Hyuk finally picked up his niece's call. He was both surprised and delighted to hear her voice. She quickly explained she had a target she wanted him to investigate. She handed over my details. With his unique ability to witness the past, uncovering a person's history was effortless for him. A few days later, I found myself teleported to a foreign land. The entire landscape was blanketed in a thick, white layer of snow. I was just starting to enjoy the view when a massive snowball slammed right into my face. The culprit was none other than Chai Neon. The girl actually had the nerve to shout that she did it on purpose. As for why we were even in this frozen wasteland, it was all because of the Cube's club activities. The hunting club had brought everyone to a secluded mountain resort. It was a trip to celebrate the club's grand return, and they already had a special event planned for us today. Hidden throughout the snowy forest were ranking flags, each tied to a special reward. Next up was the group lottery. Once again, I was paired with Chai Neon. Along the way, she wondered why I was only wearing a thin coat. I explained it was a functional artifact capable of shifting forms and regulating temperature automatically. Naturally, a luxury like this was far beyond what my investment profits could afford. It was actually a gift from Rachel, given as a reward for saving her life during the midterm exams. She really is too kind. I found myself wishing I had created more characters like her in my story. After walking a bit further, Neon spotted a flag on a distant peak. It was the prize for first place. I figured no fool would actually climb that high. Yet Neon was already beckoning me to follow her up. With a heavy sigh, I pulled out a dagger, while Neon watched in confusion. I condensed the magic of my stigma into the blade and hurled it upward. No matter where it flew, a simple manipulation of the mana allowed me to knock the flag down his. Neon was absolutely stunned. After retrieving the flag, she ran back toward me, eager to see the grand prize. Tied to the flag was a note. The reward was a single favor from Yoon Songa and her phone number. Compared to Neon's excitement, I was left speechless. I expected a better prize. I immediately handed the reward to Neon, which left her completely shocked. After all, that was the contact info for a top guild's vice leader. I simply told her I didn't need it. Neon stared at the paper in silence before trying to return it. I told her to just forget it if she didn't want it. By the time we headed back, we had even managed to find a fourth flag. That night, everyone gathered to eat. I took on the heavy responsibility of manning the grill. Back in my original world, I had helped at my aunt's barbecue shop. The conversation turned to the upcoming finals. A senior warned us that during exams, you can't trust anyone. The difficulty is brutal, and the seniors had seen many friendships shatter under the pressure. She also warned us to beware of the repeater class. As she said, these were students who failed to promote. In the novel, 20% of them end up making devil contracts. They were a high-risk group. According to the plot, they were destined to cause chaos during these finals. With another author meddling, the ratio of those turning into jinns would likely be even higher. After the barbecue, we played a game of werewolf. Everyone kept accusing Nahon of being the wolf. Seeing me as the mastermind, she directed all her fiery rage at me. Late at night, I went outside alone to enjoy the view. It felt good to finally relax. Suddenly, my laptop chimed. Someone had posted a request at the agency. I used the Book of Truth, and countless data flooded my mind. The process was agonizing, but it gave me the answers. Thankfully, the client was a very fast payer. I sat in silence after closing the laptop, watching the distant horizon. Back in my old rental room, I used to smoke. My hand moved instinctively. Before I remembered that I had quit a long time ago, I actually kicked the habit after entering this book world. But Nayeon had been watching me from behind. She teased me, calling me a former delinquent, then asked if I truly had the confidence to beat her. I countered by asking if she had the resolve to give up the bow. Nayeon didn't answer, because she couldn't even imagine losing. I simply told her to go to sleep. Before leaving, she gave me one last, immature look of disdain. The next day, near an orphanage, just as his mana was about to run dry, a figure finally appeared at the orphanage gates. The person was cradling an infant, gently placing the child down at the entrance before vanishing. Ganger-hok tried to see more, but his mana was exhausted. He realized this student, Kim, possessed such high history density that his mana couldn't sustain the search. Back in reality, Gengak was plagued by doubt. He couldn't understand why I was so special. Then, my bet with Nayeon began. The result shocked everyone. I defeated Chai-Na, setting her on a path entirely different from the original novel. Jin Hyuk had used his unique ability to peer into the past, unearthing secrets about my history in this world. But the sheer density of that information only fueled his obsession with my identity. His mana was now completely tapped out. Returning to the agency, Jin Hyuk informed his curious staff that the target of this investigation was truly one of a kind, ducking into the restroom to avoid further questioning. He muttered to himself about the shocking data he found on Kim Had. He planned to dive deeper once his mental energy recovered. This favor for his niece was proving far more troublesome than expected. Helping for free felt like a total loss, until his employee suddenly burst through the door with urgent news. The investigation couldn't stop now. The agency had just received another massive commission to dig into Kim Hajin's background. The client held a red diamond rank from the Purple Banquet, putting them on the same level as Jin Hyuk himself. Judging by the arrogant tone and the astronomical deposit, he immediately knew this request came from the chameleon troupe. Jin Hyuk was now certain that Kim Hajin was no ordinary student. Meanwhile, Friday arrived at the academy with a major announcement. The instructor warned everyone that final exams were 4 weeks away, and they would be nothing like the mid. We were told to prepare for the worst. These private finals would be held in a high-tech restricted arena. The chosen location was a remote island, teeming with an endless horde of lethal monsters and savage beasts. It was a week-long survival test. I worried that if the co-author intervened, the entire scenario would descend into chaos. With elite repeat students lurking, I had to be ready. The instructor refused to reveal any further details for now, to ensure our safety during the chaos. Several mid-level and high-ranking heroes would be deployed as guardians. Despite the protection, the tension was palpable. As the weekend began, I started packing my things to head home. But Chai-Nayeon stopped me in my tracks, confidently asking if I had forgotten about our high-stakes wager. I reminded her that if she lost, she had to give up the bow. She just smirked, telling me not to cry. We headed together to the archery range within Cube, both of us drawing our equipment as the crowd gathered. I was confused by the massive audience. But Lee Young-han claimed a bet needs witnesses to feel truly real. Shin Jong-hok barked at me, asking if I planned to drop out of Cube entirely. Nayeon chased the hecklers away so the match could begin. The rules for our duel had already been set. We would shoot at high speed, moving targets, launched from a machine, starting from a distance of 100 meters. For every successful hit, the distance would increase by 50 meters until one of us finally missed. Chai-Nayeon expected me to back down, but I found the challenge surprisingly simple. The duel officially began. We both drew our bows simultaneously. With a sharp signal to start, she released her first arrow into the air. It was a perfect bullseye on the flying target. For a prodigy like her, 100 meters was mere child's play. But when she looked back, she was stunned. I awkwardly explained that I was too startled to fire my shot. I begged for one more chance, while the students jeered. Jong-hak even shouted for me to get lost already. Nayeon was speechless, but granted the mocking my amateurish form and lack of a proper stance. She believed no amount of tries would help me. Then drew her string with a posture that was absolutely flawless. In this world, hard work is just a garnish. Raw heaven-sent talent is what truly decides the victor. As the target launched, I fired instantly. With my master sharpshooter gift, I was destined to surpass her skill. My talent acted as a divine guide for the arrow, resulting in a magnificent, perfect hit right in the center. The spectators were left in total shock. Even Kim Soo-ho couldn't believe the accuracy I had just displayed. Just moments ago, I looked like a complete novice. Having found my rhythm, I told her. The match continued. Naeon had been a legendary sword prodigy since childhood. Jinhyuk had even gifted her a priceless, high-grade magic sword. When he heard his disciple wanted to switch to the bow, he assumed it was because of her mother's past. She fiercely denied it, claiming she simply wanted a change and believed someone like her master anything. She promised to reach the top even as a ranger and apologized for discarding the sword he had given her. Jinhyuk was furious, declaring he had no use for a disciple who lacked the persistence to stick with her path. Despite his outward rage, he didn't actually do anything to stop her from following her new ambition. He simply watched her walk away in silence. Now, back at the range. Ignoring Neon's trembling shock, I calmly raised my longbow again, ready to face the next round of the challenge. Instead of simply winning, I pressed her, asking if this was truly her own desire or a path forced by fate. Warning Chinaeon not to live with regret as the clock ticked down. Our fierce duel reached the 450-meter mark. The tension was suffocating as Chinaeon drew her bow and expertly pierced the bull's. Without missing a beat, I released my arrow, matching her strike perfectly. My classmates gasped in disbelief. They never imagined a Lorenka like me could keep pace with a genius. The sharpest observers realized this wasn't just luck. It wasn't about keeping up, it was about total Every single time her arrow landed, mine followed instantly. I fired my shots without a second of hesitation, shadowing her every move. This was no longer a simple match. I was systematically crushing Chinaeon's psychological defenses. The pressure on her mounted with every breath. Sensing Kim Soo-ho's radiating fury, the onlookers fell into a tense, heavy silence. By the 9th round, the unthinkable happened. Chinaeon's focus wavered. Her arrow missed the mark. Her composure was beginning to crumble. Her face turned pale with frustration. Seizing the moment, my voice cut through the air like a blade, telling her once again that she was never meant to be an archer. She snapped back, calling my words a coward's tactic to scare her, and hissed at me to shut up and shoot. But I knew her better than she knew herself. Chinaeon lacked the ironclad stillness required for the bow. Even the slightest provocation acted like a poison, stirring a tempest of emotion within her soul. Her inner walls were shaking. It was clear this volatile temperament was a fatal flaw for a sniper. Yet she clung to the bow with a desperate, white-knuckled grip. The reason she refused to let go was simple: fear. I looked her in the eyes and ruthlessly stripped away her lies, asking if she was just too terrified to pick up a sword. The truth ignited a fire of pure rage in her eyes. It was the first time she had ever looked at me with such venom, but I didn't stop. I had to break her completely. I tore into her delusions, exposing how she had brainwashed herself into believing that the would make her the world's greatest hero, all to hide her own trauma. Even though she was a mid-path convert to archery, her natural talent had been impressive enough to keep the lie alive until this very moment. I pushed even harder, coldly stating that with her current mediocre skills, she'd never avenge her family. She wouldn't even be able to scratch a single jin. My words struck like a physical blow, shattering her concentration. Her mind became a chaotic swirl of doubt, and her next arrow flew wildly off course. It wasn't even close to the target. Before she could even process the shock of her failure, my arrow whistled through the wind and found its mark. Another perfect bull. The crowd stood frozen in stunned silence. Nobody could have predicted that the legendary cube prodigy would fall to a bottom-tier cadet. Utterly humiliated, Chinaeon fled the scene. The concerned students scrambled to find her, leaving the training grounds in disarray. It was Yu Yeonha who eventually discovered her. Curled up on a lonely bench in a secluded corner of the campus, Chinaeon sat there, a shadow of her former confident self. To Yu Yeonha's shock, the Ironwild girl was actually trembling with tears in her eyes. She whispered through her sobs, confused why Kim Hajian was being so cruel when he had actually helped her in the past. She couldn't understand his sudden malice. Though they weren't close, she never truly believed the dark rumors about him being a villain. So, why was he targeting her weakest points with such precision? Even the brilliant Yu Yonha was momentarily stumped. She knew that the loss of Chinayan's mother and the fall of her brother were wounds that never healed. It seemed like I had heartlessly ripped open those scars. But as Yu Yonha's sharp mind began to race, she realized she couldn't let this rivalry destroy her plans. Both of us were talents she desperately needed to recruit. She had to bridge this gap. Carefully, she began to spin a different narrative about my mysterious background. She reminded Naeon that Kim Hajina was an orphan, suggesting that his harsh words might actually come from a place of shared pain and deep-seated empathy. She theorized that I had caused such a massive scene not to hurt her. Perhaps, she mused, I was the only one brave enough to tell her the truth. I wanted her to stop living a lie and finally pursue the life she was truly meant for. With that thought planted, Yu Yonha left her alone to reflect. Silence fell over the garden as Chai Naeon sat in contemplation. Memories of her childhood, long buried under the weight of expectations. She remembered her brother's gentle curiosity about why she chose the bow over the sword. His eyes filled with a mix of concern and unwavering support. Chai Jinyun had believed in her, but he had also made her promise that one day, when she was ready, she would listen to her heart's true calling. She finally remembered that sacred vow. She realized she had been running away from her true path for far too long, blinded by her own misplaced fears. She had forgotten her brother's promise. But my brutal intervention had finally brought it back to light. Meanwhile, across the campus, a glowing system window flickered before my eyes with an unexpected notification. It claimed that my relationships had undergone a significant, fundamental shift. I was rewarded with a massive influx of As for Chai Naeon, she was finally reclaiming her true self. Stepping out of the shadow of the script I once wrote. She was forging a new destiny, separate from my original story. Meanwhile, Cube's final exams began. And the leader of the chameleon troop was moving in the shadows. After my decisive victory, and with Yu Yonha's guidance, and my SP reserves continued to grow from the ripples I'd caused. The next morning, Yu Jungyuk reported his latest findings to Yu. However, his investigation into the mysterious chameleon troop remained strangely blank. He warned her that I appeared to be connected to an organization far beyond their imagination. Asked if he should dig deeper into my dark secrets. But Yu Yonha's mind was already made up. She was more determined than ever to recruit me into the essence of the Straight Guild, no matter the cost. Seeing her intense focus, Yu Jungyuk completely misinterpreted her intentions. His mind jumping to a much more romantic and awkward he vowed to support her as her uncle, determined to see this match through. Ever since that fateful duel, the story of our match had become a campus legend. The rumors of the low ranker who defeated the genius spread like wildfire. Even the high-ranking instructors called me in for a very private, serious meeting. Everyone's buzzing so much I can't even show my face in class. I'm hitting the training grounds early again today. I expected to be alone, but a surprising sight met my eyes. Chai Naeon was already there, training in solitude. She was wielding a blade, her long hair now shorn short. That's when her eyes locked onto mine. She frantically hid her weapon. I asked why she was here so early, and she snapped back. What? Am I not allowed? When I brought up her new haircut and teased if she'd lost a bet, her face flushed with instant panic. She stammered that it was just for the heat, insisting she'd moved on. I smiled and told her the look really suited her. I asked if it felt cooler now. Sensing no mockery in my voice, her guard dropped as she gave a quiet reply. As I headed off to my own session, Naeon watched me go, lost in her own deep reflection. She wondered what it felt like for Kim, a swordsman who abandoned years of mastery to take up a different path. What was going through his mind? That brief moment of contemplation caused her manner to surge with newfound intensity. Her monoclad blade stretched until it brushed the ceiling. My past words began to echo in her mind once again. A chilling thought struck her. Did I know everything from the very beginning? Night soon descended upon the academy. I started stocking up on survival gear for the final exams. Even though they'll be inspecting our belongings at the entrance, they're mostly searching for unauthorized armor kits. Meanwhile, Evangeline's seed was pulsing with frantic energy once more. The seed is swelling. Her birth is drawing near. When Evangeline finally emerges into this world, she'll take the form of a young child. With a bit of witch's magic, I can keep her hidden in the dorms. I can't wait for her arrival. Meanwhile, at a nearby hotel, the leader planned to infiltrate the exams, disguised as a student. He asked Jane for assistance. He needed to gauge a certain person's true power and secure a specific item from the site. Seeing his resolve, Jane stopped her protests. She activated her skull, beginning the transformation. She handed over the forged identity documents, warning him to memorize every single detail of his new persona. The leader chuckled at her concern. Blending in as a mere student would be child's play for him. Days later, the disguise was flawless. He found himself being treated with unexpected intimacy by 2 female classmates. He finally understood what close friends meant in the report. Thankfully, managing this was well within his capabilities. But the moment I appeared, the leader's calm facade shattered. A heavy silence hung between us. I activated observation and reading. His mask was useless against me, and he knew it the moment our eyes met. I had been staring for too long. The 2 girls by his side started to notice my intense gaze. I quickly turned and walked away. Even after taking my seat, my mind was still racing to make sense of it. The leader's presence was a complete what? He remained lurking within the school grounds for the days to follow. With the written finals behind us, it was finally time for the true challenge. The practical combat exam. I kept a close eye on his persona Seo Yujong, but she acted perfectly normal. He was supposed to be gone by now. I didn't know why the plot had shifted, but I knew one thing. I tried to get close to earn some points, but all I got for my efforts was a single can of cola. I suspected he was there to scout Kim Suho and Shin. Soon, the entire group was assembled and ready. The instructor stepped forward to announce the rules. The practical exam was straightforward but brutal. We had to survive on a remote island for 5 days. Points would be awarded for every monster slain. Students could steal points from one another, or even engage in trade. The island was about to become a battlefield. For those seeking top marks, stealing an instructor's badge would net a massive 200 points. But who would dare? Every single proctor was a high-ranking, active-duty hero. We boarded our assigned ships. Once we hit the shore, I immediately scanned the crowd for Rachel. I approached her and asked if she wanted to team up. Our landing together felt like more than just a coincidence. After the ripples caused by our last battle, new enemies had emerged from the shadows. Rachel was now a prime target. In this exam, she was likely the one in the greatest danger. My invitation caught her off guard. As a lone wolf, she naturally declined justice. I changed tactics, offering to share my location. This time, she accepted my gesture of goodwill. As night fell on the first day, Chinaeon was still deep in the hunt. But a monster was creeping up behind her. Without a trace of panic, she drew her blade and ended the beast in a single flash. Chinaeon's strength had clearly evolved. Her power had surged, though she still kept her bow close. But even after the kill, joy was nowhere to be found. Her sense of direction was a total disaster, leaving her completely trapped within this labyrinthine forest. Dejection washed over her. She'd been fighting non-stop since arriving. Yet food and shelter remained out of reach. Chinaeon simply couldn't find them. At this rate, she feared she'd be the very first student eliminated. Starvation was taking its toll. But as she pushed through the brush, a faint light finally flickered in the distance. The heavenly scent of food grew stronger. Overjoyed, she rushed forward, certain she'd finally found salvation. As she burst through the thicket, our eyes met. She was a total mess, and she stared at me in pure disbelief. I calmly reminded her that the 12-hour peace treaty was still active. Luckily, she wasn't looking for a fight. Her eyes were glued to the sizzling meat. When I told her I'd come prepared, she offered a classic Sunder compliment. Suddenly, her stomach let out a thunderous growl, causing her face to turn a deep, embarrassed shade of crimson. I wasn't about to let her starve, but everything has a price. I told her, half her points for a meal. Chinaeon gasped, horrified by the cost. To her, this was nothing short of daylight robbery. But as her stomach protested again, she gave in. I'd actually expected to run into Rachel first, not her. Still, seeing her eat so happily was worth it. My cooking skills were, after all. Later, I breached the drone servers, gaining a secret bird's-eye view of the other students' progress. Through a remote lens, I spotted Rachel approaching a group that seemed to have an abundance of supplies. She tried to buy food, but they insisted it was free. "We're all classmates," they said with suspicious kindness. They claimed there was no need for points. But I knew better, these were the dangerous students from the repeater class. They were likely Jin. When Rachel was suddenly ambushed, I stepped in from the shadows to ensure her safety. Before that, Chinayan had already secured her survival by trading her precious points for a hot meal. While monitoring the drones, I watched as Rachel fell into the trap of the repeaters. False generosity. When dawn should have arrived, I crawled out of my sleeping bag, but I immediately noticed something was wrong. An unnatural darkness clung to the island, a total eclipse. Beside me, Chinayan was still dead to the world. However, the Evangeline seed was bouncing around restlessly. The little guy was clearly hungry for his morning meal. I couldn't help but smile at how adorable it was. After feeding it, I tucked the seed into my pocket. It was time to move. I called out to Chinayan, warning her that I was packing up the tent. She didn't budge. I decided not to wake her. She had her sleeping bag, so she'd be fine regardless. Besides, the real test began today. The grace period was over. Student-on-student combat was finally authorized. Killing was still forbidden, which made dealing with those suspected Jins high-stakes chess match. They hadn't made their move yet. I needed high ground, a vantage point. My target was the legendary world tree. I moved through the shadows toward my destination with lethal speed. Just as I vanished, Chinayan's sleeping bag stirred. Meanwhile, I reached the base of the massive tree. I wasn't alone. Hidden eyes tracked my every move. But before an assassin could strike, Yonha intervened. She warned her teammate to stay back. He was baffled by my rank 9-100-30-4. I stood beneath the towering world tree. The boy watched, scoffing. He's not actually going to jump, is he? That was exactly the plan. With a burst of parkour skill, I defied gravity and scaled the trunk with ease. Ross's jaw dropped. Yonha warned him to keep my true strength. A secret eye was a future asset. After all, he nodded frantically, swearing an oath of silence. Suddenly, an urgent message pinged on Yonha's device. It was SEO Jun Yonha and Ross. While I climbed higher into the branches to prepare my next move, I activated my 1,000-mile eyes. The world unfolded beneath me as I scanned the island for my true prey. I caught sight of a specific target lingering below. Finally, a plan to crush those repeaters formed in my mind. I carved a cryptic message and coordinates onto a branch. Imbued with the mimicry of a stigma, the branch pierced the earth right before Shin Jong-hak's feet. Startled, he grabbed the wood and spun around, searching for the culprit. But from this distance, I was a ghost. Shin Jong-hak will never find out. Now, I just need to wait for the pieces to fall into place. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Chinayan emerged from her sleeping bag once she was certain I'd gone. She'd been awake all along, mistakenly thinking my comment about being cute was meant for her. Her face flushed a deep crimson. Why would I say such a thing to someone who was supposedly asleep? Baffled, she wondered if I meant a stray animal, or if I was simply praising myself. But after ruling those out, she concluded those words were truly intended for her alone. Flustered and unsure how to act, she had no idea that far away, I was oblivious that my praise for Evangeline would cause such a massive misunderstanding. Deep in the forest, Rachel and the repeaters continued their exploration. But her unease was growing. She'd been with Ju Yuhan's group since last night. They shared food and points without hesitation. They even looked after her, yet Rachel found these senior students to be incredibly unsettling. Unlike other students, desperate for points, this group showed absolutely no interest in the score. Their eyes were constantly fixed on her. It felt as if they were tracking her every move. These red flags told Rachel she needed to escape. But then, Ju Yuhan suddenly called out. He claimed to have found a 10-point grizzly bear and asked for her help to capture it. Rachel agreed, thinking she could leave naturally after assisting them one last time. Soon, Ju pointed ahead at a massive shadow. But when Rachel looked, a lethal Jin stood on the cliff. Ju Yuhan played dumb, feigning confusion like a fool. Sensing the Jin's murderous intent, Rachel quickly shoved Ju Yuhan out of the way. A split second later, the Jin's attack struck. This was an ambush she hadn't expected. She needed to evade and regroup, quickly checking on Ju Yuhan's condition. To her shock, he faked a heavy injury, screamed Jin in terror, and bolted away. Rachel watched in disbelief at his pathetic acting. Now, the dark truth was finally clear. She never imagined Cube students would actually conspire with the enemy. I was too naive, she muttered, as lethal rock spikes hurtled toward her. She dodged with grace, but the Jin used the dust cloud to launch a follow-up strike. His power was immense, but Rachel fought back fiercely. She spotted a critical opening. But as she moved to strike, her feet were suddenly bound tight. A second Jin emerged from the shadows behind her, completing a deadly pincer attack. Trapped, Rachel braced for the end until a blinding flash of light ignited the sky. A high-speed bullet pierced the Jin instantly, sending him crashing to the ground. Enraged by his comrade's death, the first Jin unleashed his full power to crush Rachel. Suddenly, a blade echoed through the trees. Kim Soo-ho appeared, blocking the devastating blow. He signaled Chai Naeon, whose fully charged arrow found its mark with pinpoint accuracy. Seeing her classmates from the Veritas class arrive, Rachel finally breathed a sigh of relief. They had rushed over after hearing the sounds of battle. Thankfully, Rachel was unharmed. Kim Soo-ho checked the cliffside, noting that the enemy had managed to escape into the shadows. He suggested that Rachel stay with them until they reached a safer area. The group began to move out, but as they started walking, something on the ground caught Rachel's eye. Curious, she knelt down to investigate. Buried in the mud was a large-caliber bullet casing. She picked it up, her mind racing. Finding this here meant one thing: that initial saving shot didn't come from Chi Naeon. Meanwhile, I watched Ju Yu-hun flee, knowing his fate would be handled by others. I chose not to interfere directly, knowing how unpredictable this forest could truly be. Just a tiny witch's seed. Yet it was enough to bring the stoic Rachel to tears. Moments earlier, after her rescue, Rachel decided to follow Kim Soo-ho's earnest suggestion. She joined Chai Naeon's group as they moved out, soon discovering a safe spot to set up camp and rest. As they settled in, Soo-ho asked if she had truly chosen the sword for the coming battles, prompting a hasty explanation from She insisted the sword was merely a sidearm, knowing these finals were too critical to risk on the difficulty of using only a bow. Meanwhile, Rachel's mind was elsewhere. Fixated on the mysterious bullet's origin, as a certain name began to surface in her heart, the questions burned. How could Kim Ha-jin have known she was in peril? And what was his true motive for helping her? Why save her, and then hide his face? But before she could dive deeper into the mystery, a voice from the side broke her focus. Naeon suggested that since she and Soo-ho were currently without a team, they should all join forces and cooperate together. To their surprise, Rachel declined. Offering a soft apology, she prepared to leave, even as Soo-ho urged her to stay for her own safety. He warned that wandering alone was far too dangerous, but Rachel was resolute. She had a specific person she needed to find. Elsewhere, I had just finished taking down several monsters, bringing my total score to 22 points, thanks to Chai Naeon's contribution. To truly secure my spot and pass this exam without any doubt, I calculated that I still needed at least 50 more points. Relying solely on monster hunting would take far too much time. But just as I was sighing over the grind, I looked up. I froze in my tracks. The captain, still disguised as SEO Yujin, and I couldn't help but suspect he was looking for a fight. I knew I was no match for him in a real battle, but I steadied my nerves, guessing he was likely just there to evaluate me. I cautiously asked why he had come, but my stomach dropped when he suddenly drew his sword. This was bad, very bad. He was playing for keeps. As he coldly commanded me to draw my weapon, I feigned confusion, desperately trying to stall for time. While acting oblivious, I quietly began channeling the ether hidden in my clothes, but the captain saw through it instantly, telling me to drop the act. He knew his disguise was useless now. Watching me stall, he became curious about what kind of desperate plan I was actually brewing. I offered no reply, which the captain took as a signal to engage. However, he failed to notice something crucial happening right under his nose. A thin cord of ether, under my perfect control. With my goal finally achieved, I could breathe. I finally let out a sigh of relief. The captain was genuinely confused, wondering why I was holding a watch. Did I plan to surrender? I calmly informed him that the watch didn't belong to me. He froze for a few long seconds, before glancing down at his own wrist. He let out a sharp cry of shock. I seized the moment, reminding him that according to the rules of a student duel, ... the first person to seize the opponent's watch is declared the winner. One firm press on that fingerprint lock, and the owner is instantly eliminated. Infuriated, the captain barked that I had played dirty, but I simply tossed the watch back to him with a triumphant smirk. Consider this me taking it easy on you, I declared. He stood there, stunned, but I didn't wait around for questions and bolted. Left in a stunned silence, the captain finally reached out to his superior, who unfortunately had been momentarily distracted and missed the entire exchange. Because they hadn't seen the display, the captain began to analyze the situation alone. Despite his senses being dulled by his sword's unique power, he realized that for a mere 17-year-old student, I possessed a side that was unsettlingly mysterious and capable. For the first time, he truly regretted his own carelessness. A while later, I managed to scout out a secluded spot. It was the perfect place to set up camp. Having narrowly escaped that encounter, I planned to eat a hearty meal before hunting again. But then, a sudden rustling sound caught my ear. I turned around, shocked to see that Rachel had actually found me. It was clear she had been searching for me. She opened her mouth to ask about what happened, but after a long day, without food, her stomach gave a betraying growl. I invited her to join me, and, blushing with embarrassment, she quickly promised to compensate me with points. While the food was cooking, Rachel curiously asked what I'd been doing all alone. I simply told her I'd been focused on gathering points. I knew exactly what she was fishing for, but I couldn't just come out and admit that I was the one who had saved her life. I also noticed the faint scar on her neck. Suddenly, I felt Evangeline squirming inside my pocket. Before I could react, she leaped out on her own, flying through the air and sticking herself directly onto Rachel's wound. Evangeline's movement was so lightning fast that I didn't have a chance to stop her. Rachel, meanwhile, was completely bewildered by the sudden impact. As she cautiously reached up to touch her neck, the strange, squirming sensation sent a wave of terror through her. She couldn't hold back a terrified scream. It was only after I removed Evangeline's seed that Rachel finally started to calm down. She had honestly thought it was some kind of giant insect. I apologized immediately, explaining that it was just my peculiar petsy. Hearing that, Rachel handed Evangeline back to me. Desperate to break the awkward tension that followed, I quickly spoke up. I hurriedly announced that the food was finally ready and invited her to eat. Rachel agreed, though she still looked a little flustered. It was a bit late for an invite, but he wanted to join my team. I accepted the offer, turning to Rachel and noting that she sounded exactly like Chai Neon in that moment. This led Rachel to mistakenly believe he had approached me first, so I had to quickly clarify the truth. Rachel then remembered he still had his original squad. Since he was with Ju Yehoon's team, I told her not to worry. If those were his teammates, leaving them wouldn't matter. They were likely destined for a quick elimination anyway. Just as I predicted, the moment he stepped into Yukibum's camp, Shin Jong-hak unleashed absolute devastation without mercy. He left Yukibum critically injured. When Ju Yehoon finally returned, he stood frozen. He couldn't fathom why Shin Jong-hak was even there. Upon seeing Ju Yehoon, Shin Jong-hak's lips curled into a sinister smirk. He tossed a branch toward him. As Ju Yehoon looked down, he saw a blatant provocation and coordinates etched into it. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he desperately tried to explain that it was all just a massive misunderstanding. Shin Jong-hak's cold, indifferent response sent a chill through Ju Yehoon. Slowly gripped his long spear. Closing the distance step by step, he declared that the sender didn't matter. He simply couldn't stand the sight of pathetic ants. He had always felt a deep, burning loathing for people like Yukibum, trash who scheme and gossip in the shadows. Meanwhile, high within the examination tower on the island's northwest side, Examiner Yoon Seungja was lost in deep thought. Her colleague noticed her distraction and curiously asked who was on her mind. Her answer was simple. Kim Ha. The man was baffled. Wasn't Kim Soo-ho her absolute favorite? At his confusion, Yoon Seungja merely offered a mysterious smile. She admitted Soo-ho was her first choice. But she had recently acquired a report where Yuyona's assessment of Kim Ha-jin. The evaluation was even more intriguing than Soo. Combined with the rumors of his light magic, she had to know the truth. This was the perfect opportunity to see what Kim Ha-jin was truly capable of. Her companion wondered how she would test him. To verify his power, she simply pointed toward her examiner's badge. The ultimate bait to lure out his true potential. By the following morning, as Rachel sat alone in the camp, a single conviction began to take root in her mind. She was almost certain I was the one who had protected her. Yet she couldn't understand why I refused to admit it. She wondered how I knew she was in danger. Deep down, she knew this chaotic exam was the work of Lancaster. That realization weighed heavily on her soul, sparking a terrifying suspicion. Meanwhile, I focused entirely on the hunt. My progress for the day was right on track. Rachel was supposed to join me, but she had woken up feeling quite unwell. After I made sure she ate some nourishing meat, her strength began to return. She'll be back on her feet very soon. Suddenly, a shimmering light caught my eye. I pushed through the dense foliage, drawn toward the mysterious, glowing source. To my surprise, the trees gave way to a massive, hidden lake. I suspected high-tier monsters like giant crocodiles were lurking beneath the surface. To get a better look at the situation, I used my stigma to manifest a brilliant sphere of light. One flash across the water, and no monster could stay hidden. But a sudden sound from behind made me freeze. When my shout went unanswered, I realized I had been stalked for a long time. Their stealth was impressive, but they made a mistake. With my 1,000-mile eyes active, no shadow can hide from me, no hiding skill could escape my gaze. Realizing it was a familiar face, I fired a warning shot that hissed right past them. A startled Chai Neon jumped out from her hiding spot. Before she could vent her anger, I demanded to know why she was tailing me. She tried to deny it, but it wasn't about to let her off the hook. Then what exactly are you doing here? I pressed. Chai Neon began to stammer, her face turning red and speechless. Desperate to change the subject, she asked about the light I threw in the water. I stood my ground, demanding an explanation first. Why follow me? In a fit of frustration, she finally blurted out the truth. She had been following Examiner Yoon Soo. I had to confirm. If it was truly the person I was thinking of, even if my tone sounded a bit provoking. Once she confirmed my suspicions, I immediately pulled out my laptop and told her to give me a single moment. I needed to check the drone feed. In the original novel, Yoon Soo-nga was supposed to observe Kim Soo-ho for the first few days. She was meant to scout other talents later, but it seemed she had found me already. The drone footage confirmed her presence. She was definitely nearby. Her behavior here confirmed one thing. I was officially on her list of high potential prospects. An eerie insect egg on a massive tree suddenly began to crack, giving birth to a breathtakingly beautiful butterfly spirit. Through my surveillance, I caught Yoon Soo-nga watching from the shadows. There was no doubt. Was now a person of interest. Chai Neon immediately pressed me, asking if I was the one who summoned that sphere of light. I didn't bother denying it, but I quickly warned her to drop the The truth is a burden far too dangerous to carry. Annoyed by my mysterious act, she snapped that my head must be full of water, and she couldn't care less anyway. Tired of the bickering, I reminded her I claimed this spot first, and told her to go hunt somewhere else. Once she finally vanished, I let out a heavy breath of relief. I definitely couldn't let her keep digging into my secrets. Explaining the magic of stigma would mean revealing the existence of this novel world. A truth she would never believe. She would probably think I was insane. 2 hours after we split, I had already taken down a swarm of low-tier monsters. I secured 15 points in no time, but then a new, much more frustrating problem appeared right before my eyes. Yoon Soo-nga, who had been tailing me from the shadows, seeing my guard up, she claimed she was just evaluating students and offering a few special bonuses. The challenge was simple. She would stand perfectly still. She promised to use only her left hand, force her to move, and that 200-point examiner badge is mine. It was a golden opportunity, far too tempting for any student to ignore. Despite facing the legendary Yoon Seonga, she waited for my move. In response, I slowly reached for my sidearm. I couldn't let such massive points slip away, pulling the trigger without hesitation. With a casual wave, she swatted the bullet aside. From light orbs to high-powered gunfire, my raw destructive force was surprisingly formidable. She just smiled, remarking it stung, making the massive power gap painfully clear. She wasn't even using mana. Pure physical reflex alone left me 0 openings. I hurled the throwing knife, which she dodged, while casually praising my effort. I followed up with rapid-fire magic bullets, yet she struck them down instantly. Suspecting a hidden gun talent, she watched as I used stigma to redirect daggers. At this range, I doubted even her reflexes could block the shifting blade's path. But her raw mana flared, shattering the steel instantly. Her power was truly monstrous. Winning was impossible. Still, she seemed thrilled. I could manipulate trajectories with mana. Calling me an onion with endless layers, she grew desperate to uncover my secrets. She hungered for more, but I knew I couldn't win, and refused to waste time. I turned to leave, ignoring her confusion as I walked away from the challenge. She tried to stop me, but I was focused on one thing. hunting for points. From the shadows, the captain watched everything, waiting until I had finally gone. A teammate warned that acting alone might look suspicious to the original host's friends. The captain found teamwork insufferable, but suddenly, the entire island began to shake. The captain sensed the heavy tremors. The butterfly seedling was finally stirring from its slumber. Deep within the island's heart, something ancient was waking. A massive, pulsating purple egg throbbed with a rhythmic, heavy heartbeat. This was the legendary vessel destined to birth the butterfly seedling. These spirit-type monsters survive by parasitizing sacred trees. In my original novel, this creature was destined to fall by the main protagonist's hand. That victory granted Kim Soo-ho the precious seedling powder, while Rachel gained the vital spark of inspiration needed to awaken her enlightenment. Since Rachel is on my team now, I must guide her directly into the heat of battle to trigger that same awakening. There is just one problem. I never specified the exact coordinates in my writing. Now, Rachel is following me through the dense wilderness. We have been hunting for hours, and she is growing suspicious. She finally asked why I keep leading us in these endless circles. I fell silent, unable to give her an answer. Without the exact location of the encounter, all I can do is wait for fate to move. Meanwhile, across the island, Kim Soo-ho's party was displaying incredible teamwork, effortlessly taking down wave after wave of dangerous monsters. It is now day 4, with only 20 hours remaining until the exam concludes. Suddenly, Chai Naeon turned to Kim Soo-ho with a serious question. She asked what he truly thought of Kim had. Soo-ho looked back, completely baffled by the sudden mention of that mysterious name. Ever since the museum incident, he felt I was shrouded in mystery. Just the mention of secrets. ... made Kim Soo-ho instantly recall everything I had said during the tycoon case. He completely misread my relationship with Chai Naeon. Seeing his face, she assumed he knew some juicy insider gossip. She pressed him for answers, but Soo-ho just chuckled and told her to ask me herself. Suddenly, a monstrous root erupted from the earth. In an instant, the entire island was swarmed by a wooden tide. From my position, I finally felt the ground tremble. Across the forest, chaos erupted as other students were ambushed ... by the relentless roots. Screams and the clash of steel echoed through the woods. As the island shook violently, the time had finally come. I turned to Rachel, telling her we needed to head straight for the epicenter. I'd need her protection in that monster-infested zone. Despite her confusion, she nodded and followed my lead. The others would surely flock toward the butterfly seedling soon. There was no way I was letting this chance slip away. We sprinted toward the source at full speed. Meanwhile, the proctors had already noticed the anomaly on the island. Very argued that this monster was outside the exam scope, suggesting they pull the plug and pause the test. But Yoon Sunga disagreed. She believed the students were more than capable of handling a single butterfly seedling. She trusted these future heroes wouldn't let her down. But back on the island, Chai Naeon faced the massive roots, drawing the sword she'd recently started practicing with. Her innate talent was terrifying, ... proving she was still a force to be reckoned with. With one fluid strike, she cleaved the largest root. Kim Soo-ho and Yi Yongin were impressed. He suggested keeping her sword key tighter to the blade for a sharper cut. As the battle raged, Yongin realized the roots were endless. Soo-ho saw it too. Slicing limbs was useless. They had to strike the heart. They set off to find the main body. Nearby, other students noticed a tree that looked disturbingly out of place. Something was squirming inside a hanging cocoon. Suddenly, the shell burst open, and from the gore emerged ... the ethereal butterfly seed. The students stared in awe, clueless about the nightmare that had just hatched. Taking flight, the creature scattered shimmering dust into the air. A beautiful, glowing mist ... slowly blanketed the entire forest. When Naeon's group arrived, they saw the air sparkling with points of light. Just as they wondered what it was, Naeon's lungs seized up. Her strength drained away in an instant. The other students collapsed, one by one. Within seconds, her legs gave out, and she fell to the ground. Soo-ho caught her just in time. Checking his friends, he realized they weren't poisoned. They were simply fast asleep. It wasn't a toxin, but a sedative. Soo-ho had only stayed conscious by holding his breath the moment things felt off. But he couldn't hold his breath forever. He needed to take down that butterfly before he inhaled the powder. Victory wasn't certain, but then, a sudden sound of rapid footsteps caught his attention. He looked up as two shadows leaped from the thicket in a perfect blur of motion. His eyes widened when he recognized Rachel and me. We had arrived just in the nick of time. I handed Rachel a mask. ID prepared. Finally, my precious witch's seed. Raised on Rachel's blood, little Evangeline's very first words, Mama. Safe behind our masks, we were the only ones immune to the butterfly's hypnotic haze. Rachel looked at the fallen students in shock, her mind racing with a single question. Had I predicted all of this? But before she could ask, I already had the target in my sights. I told her I'd handle the monster above. Keep those roots off me, I barked. With her backing me up, I drew my pistol and unleashed a rapid-fire barrage at the flying beast. A bullet tore through its wing, sending a shrill shriek through the air. Infuriated, it summoned a tidal wave of roots. Rachel was a whirlwind of steel, shredding every root that came near. But then, disaster struck. She gasped a hidden root was erupting from directly beneath me. Without a second thought, she shoved me out of harm's way, taking the hit herself. The roots coiled around her ankle like vipers. She was slammed violently into the ground. Rachel, I screamed, desperate to check her condition. But I had no time to move. A swarm of roots lunged at me. Kim Suho gritted his teeth, shielding me, despite inhaling the toxic powder. His condition was dire, and Rachel lay nearby, completely unconscious. Panic surged within me. Then a vandal seed suddenly reacted inside my pocket. It leaped out eagerly, latching onto Rachel with inexplicable joy. I wanted to stop it, but Suho promised to hold the monster. He was spent. I only had mana for 3 fire bullets. I had to kill it now. I quickly told Suho my plan. The seedling was agile. I needed a point-blank shot to kill it. As I prepared to move, Suho stepped up to distract it. He agreed instantly, unleashing the devastating power of the sword. His aura was overwhelming. He had grown much stronger since the museum. Yet he marveled at my composure. Despite his incredible display of power, he remembered how I had even seen Chinayan's hidden potential. To him, I seemed omniscient. His words left me momentarily dazed. He charged, tearing through the monster's roots in sword scent mode. Nothing could stop him. I used the opening to sprint forward. I was dazed because I wrote this world, but could never say. I was the extra I never created. Reaching the peak, my fire bullet pierced the seedling's vital point. Suho watched in awe as it ignited. He was barely standing, but thought the battle was finally over. But the seedling thrashed violently, refusing to die even while burning. It summoned roots to catch its fall, desperate to survive. My firepower was not enough. I prepared another shot, then something happened. Purple lightning struck. The monster finally crashed down, utterly defeated. I was stunned. Our captain appeared out of nowhere to intervene. Was he after the pollen? Suho delivered the final killing blow. With the beast dead, Suho finally collapsed from total exhaustion. The captain reached for the precious powder. I could not let him take it. He did not know its value. He likely saw it as just expensive loot to be sold. But that powder was essential for Suho's growth against future rivals. I had to secure it. Surprisingly, the captain actually halted. He scanned the area. Every other student was asleep from pollen. No student should have stayed awake, yet there I was. To him, Kim Hajin was becoming an unsolvable mystery. He decided to observe me. Truth was, I was using ether. Before I could mask up, the captain launched a sudden strike. I could not react before a mana barrier encased us both. Inside the sphere, he revealed himself and asked if I knew him. My mind raced. Wait. My mind raced. I blurted out, feigning shock. He froze, his brain short-circuiting. That was his fake alias. When did you find out? He demanded. Before I could answer, he threatened to kill me if I lied. Then he corrected himself. He would just beat me. I was terrified. I quickly claimed I found it while swiping a watch. It was a lie, but one the captain would find believable. I told him my sharp eyes caught something suspicious. once I got within close range. But the captain knew better. Sharp eyes weren't enough. Not after I had ignored those jamming devices. He began to wonder. Did Kim Ha-jin possess a rare mana with anti-demon properties? That would explain everything, by channeling that specific mana into his optic nerves. Seeing through illusions would be child's play. If his guess was true, I was a prize the troop couldn't lose. The barrier dropped. My heart hammered against my ribs as the captain slowly closed the distance. Cold sweat trickled down my neck, but to my surprise, he offered to share the seedling with me. He demanded a price in return. He fell into an awkward, contemplative silence. He had no idea what he wanted. Over the comms, Drosh urged him to take his time thinking. Finally, he gave a baffling request. He simply wanted my contact information. I thought my life was over, but it was just a close call. These finals were turning into a nightmare. At least I hit my goal. Since the boss interfered, I'll have to hand the item to Suho later. Once he vanished, it hit me I had completely forgotten about Rachel and Evangeline. I turned to see Rachel beneath the great tree, her entire body. The radiance erupted from her embrace. It was the moment Evangeline was finally being born. A blinding flash forced me to look away. Meanwhile, Rachel remained lost in her deep slumber. In her dreams, she was still hunting spirits, but the sudden warmth began to pull her toward consciousness. She saw a child in her dreams and pulled them into a gentle hug. A warmth spread through her. ... As if all her old wounds were finally mending. There was something so familiar about the child in her arms. Looking at that innocent smile, Richa felt like she was looking at her own childhood self. The little girl whispered something, but the words were faint. Rachel tried to ask her to repeat it. ... But exhaustion claimed her again. Even as she drifted off, she kept murmuring the question. What did she say? Rachel wondered. But standing nearby, I had heard every single word. Evangeline had called Rachel Mama. And then she looked at me and called me Papa. Later, Chai Neon finally woke up, just as the examiners arrived on the scene. I busied myself moving the unconscious Suho and the others. The chaotic fourth day finally ended. Day 5 arrived, and students were at long last, these hellish finals were over. The butterfly seedling caused an uproar among the staff. Eventually, they split the kill points between the 4 of us. Back in my room, I lay in bed, waiting for a sign. But the captain never reached out. I couldn't help but wonder, why was he so interested in me? My thoughts were cut short when Chai Neon burst in. Apparently, Suho told her that I was the one who shattered the butterfly's wings. With a simple pistol? No way, I played it off. Surprisingly, she actually fell for it. Before she could dig deeper, I turned the tables. Why didn't you use your bow back then? She froze, as if struck by lightning. You're the one who told me to use a sword, she roared. I just sighed. Being that stubborn is dangerous. Using a weapon you haven't mastered is suicide in a real fight. Don't worry about me, she snapped. It's not like I'm some total amateur with a blade. So, how did it feel, using the sword? I asked. She immediately looked away. You're still scared, aren't you? I teased. She immediately began to stammer out a frantic defense. She was a terrible liar. I guess the co-author didn't bother changing that part of her character setting. I offered a small smile. Just keep practicing. You were born to be a swordswoman, after all. Days later, back at the academy, Yu Yonha listened to Neon's story, while they grabbed a bite. Hajin definitely has a crush on you, Yonha declared. Even Suho nodded in agreement. Their teasing sent a flush creeping up Nahane's neck, but as Yonha asked for her next move, she spotted me nearby. Upon hearing Yonha call out, Chai Neon reflexively looked away to avoid eye contact. Spotting Kim Suho's group approaching, I offered them a brief greeting while casting a lingering glance at the visibly restless Chai Neon. I turned to take my leave, but that single look was all Yonha needed to confirm her suspicions. Left alone with her thoughts, Chai Neon was spiraling in confusion. Meanwhile, I returned to my dormitory with the supplies I'd bought. The moment I entered, Evangeline rushed toward me with a bright smile. I had to remind her not to run in the room. Curious about where I had gone, she beamed. When I told her I was getting food, I then leaned down and picked her up. I tried to reason with her, asking if she could stop calling me Papa and perhaps use my name. Kim Ha-jin instead. I even suggested Uncle Kim, but little Evangeline wasn't having it. persistently asking me why she had to change. Her presence in my dorm was a secret that traced back to the day she finally hatched. Evangeline had asked me why her mama was sleeping again. Initially, I was confused about who she meant by Papa. To my shock, she was looking right at me. Just then, the examiners arrived to inspect the area, so I urged her to revert. She was worried about Rachel's condition, so I had to use a bit of clever persuasion to ease her mind. Being a good girl, she listened and transformed back into a seed. That was how I managed to sneak her into the dorms. Watching her eat so politely, she truly looked like a tiny, doll-like version of Rachel. I let her focus on her meal. Now, it was time to handle the butterfly sealing powder. This rare substance clings to anything possessing mana. It acts as a catalyst to awaken hidden potential, whether it's applied to a person or a powerful artifact. Fate intended for this powder to fall into the hands of Rachel and Kim Suho. I held it now. Meanwhile, back in her own room, Rachel was haunted by the memory of the mysterious child she had seen. The sensation was so vivid. Even after waking, she could still feel the girl's lingering warmth on her palms. Was it a forest spirit or merely a dream-born hallucination? Yet, the memory of that pure smile stayed with her. She found herself smiling, along with the memory, cherishing that warmth as if it promised a future reunion. Elsewhere, Chai Nayan's incredible talent, the Sea of Mana, was officially revealed. With a bow, her power became absolute. As the chaos of the cube final exams finally drew to a close, I successfully kept Evangeline's existence a secret in my room. A few days later, a school-wide notification arrived. It was the Guild Apprenticeship Program, a system designed to give elite students a taste of the professional hero world. During the break, students shadow active heroes. Naturally, the top-tier guilds have the right to handpick their candidates. However, each guild is strictly limited to selecting only 3 students from the first and second-year ranks. For a freshman ranked outside the top 300, an invite is a fantasy. Still, I was curious about the hero industry. Beyond the lore I had written, I wondered what their daily lives were like. Sadly, my admission rank was a major hurdle. Even with my improved exam scores, cracking the top 300 was impossible. I assumed this program wasn't for me. Just as I was about to give up on the idea, my smartwatch suddenly vibrated with an unexpected notification. To my utter disbelief, a guild had contacted me. I opened the message to find an invitation from Essence of the Strait. Once the vacation officially started, I headed out to meet Yuya, who was already waiting for me on the street. She greeted me with a bright smile, admitting she was worried I might actually turn down her invitation. She mentioned another guest was running late, so she suggested we head to the guild headquarters first. As we drove, she praised my performance in the finals, though I had only managed to scrap together 67 points. Soon, looking up at the massive structure, I found myself completely breathless. "Welcome to Essence of the Strait," she said. Even though I created this world, seeing the giant in person was overwhelming. Inside the lobby, the atmosphere was electric, filled with busy professionals and high-ranking heroes on the move. Although it's called a hero experience, a significant portion of the work is actually handled by elite analysts. Complex missions require deep strategic planning and data analysis before any field operation even begin. I finally understood why a low-ranked student like myself was granted an invitation to such a prestigious guild. It was clearly Yorna's doing. As the daughter of the guild leader, she certainly possessed that kind of influence. We eventually reached a high-security office, the heart of the guild's intelligence, the Essence of the Strait analysis room. Our host was Park Sung-ho, a high-ranking hero and Yorna's relative. He noted that I held the #1 rank in theory, so he led me straight to the analysis room. Although Park Sang-ho appeared to be a perfect gentleman on the surface, he was actually a cunning snake who would eventually stab you Yonha in the back. Just then, a sharp female voice rang out behind me. It was Ye Janar, a mid-level hero from Essence of the Strait. She sneered mockingly, "A student ranked 930-4... is actually here for an internship?" Gina was clearly targeting you, Yonha, and I understood exactly why she was being so hostile. She was a loyal pawn of the Vice Guild Master, Jang Hosak. The Guild Master's daughter was the rightful successor. Naturally, Gina saw her as a massive thorn in her side. Little did she know, she'd eventually become Yorna's most loyal subordinate. She would even rise to the rank of Vice Guild Master later on. She was a key character in the story, but I had to admit, her attitude right now was incredibly grating. As Gina scanned the data in her hands, a wicked idea began to take shape. She challenged me, saying, if I had the guts, I should solve the errors in the documents. Then, she condescendingly called me a kid. I'll admit, she successfully provoked me. I asked to borrow some paper, but the woman just kept snickering with that annoying smirk. Right then, Yonha received a notification. The final member had arrived. They immediately headed out together to greet the newcomer. I stayed behind and began reviewing the documents. They contained complex detection data from a dungeon raid that needed final verification. With my unique talents of observation and reading, a problem like this was child's play. I had the results calculated in mere seconds. All that was left was to write down the final analytical conclusion to finish the report. But then, that woman, Gina, just as I was about to finish, she snatched the documents away with a look of pure disgust and ordered me to follow them out. I was fuming, but I followed her anyway. It was a shadowy, hadn't even had the chance to write down the crucial conclusion. If Gina ever tries to crawl back and ask for my help later. Finally, the elevator doors slid open. The moment I stepped out, I came face to face. It took her a split second to realize it was actually me. She immediately turned to Yonha, demanding to know why I was there. Suddenly, the pieces of the puzzle finally clicked. So the final member was Chai Naeon all along. But why on earth did Yonha keep that a secret from me? Meanwhile, inside Yu Jinyuk's office, he had spent an entire month digging for information. Yet he only had a few measly pages on Kim Ha-jin. No matter how, he cried, he couldn't find a single lead on my past connections, my parents, or even how I ended up as an orphan. However, one specific detail he uncovered caught his attention. Elsewhere, now that everyone had gathered, Park Song-ho let us out for our field experience. We just had to wait a few moments for the official orders to come through. He asked Chai Naeon why she was late, and upon hearing she was visiting her grandfather, Sang-ho's face filled with pure excitement. After all, her grandfather was the legendary hero. Just then, Yonha checked her phone and said she'd be right back. She needed to step away to take a private call. Once she reached the restroom, Yonha finally picked up the phone. The caller was her uncle, Yu Jinyuk. He got straight to the point, asking about the progress of the investigation I'd requested. To save face, because he had found so little, Jinyuk lied smoothly. Claiming he hadn't even started the search yet. His words made Yonha visibly annoyed. Then, Jinyuk asked a pointed question. Why was his niece so interested in Kim Ha-jin's parents? Did he truly want to find his long-lost parents? Yonha told her uncle she believed he did. After all, Ha-jin had memorized the entire wanted list. She suspected it was because of them. She wondered if his parents had been caught up in some high-profile crime, which is why he was so obsessed with that list. At those words, Jinyuk fell into a heavy silence. It reminded him of the very thing he was currently so concerned about. He quickly made a lazy excuse and hung up. Yonha wanted to ask when the investigation would actually start. On the other side, Jinyuk's gaze was dark and troubled. He couldn't stop wondering. Was Kim Ha-jin really connected to that incident? The tragedy that occurred 16 years ago. At the Kwangmu Fortress, 87 civilians, in a shelter, and 9 heroes, protecting them, all brutally murdered. When Jinyuk tried to investigate this years ago, someone caught him and held it over his head. Because of that, he was ultimately exiled from the Yu family. Although the massacre was officially blamed on the Jins, having investigated it himself, he knew the truth. 3 powerful figures were behind it. First was Korea's former leader, Kim Shi. The second was the chairman of Daein Chaiju. And the third was Yu Jin-woong, his own brother and Yonna's father. These titans didn't even do it themselves. They hired an elite assassination guild. To them, those lives were worth nothing at all. Jinyuk's thoughts raced. If Kim Ha-jin was truly a survivor of that massacre, then everything was about to change. If a revenge plot was truly unfolding, the stakes were far too high. He knew he had to end this right now. If the investigation continued, and that madman Chai Ju-chil caught wind of it, he would surely end up in an early grave. Meanwhile, we waited at Essence Strait for our next move. Finally, the orders arrived. We were to eliminate the multi-headed petrification golems that had appeared. They were incredibly fast. Park Sang-ho noticed I'd fallen behind. But Chai Naeon told him to just leave me. She claimed I'd catch up on my own. As for you, Yonha, She'd been wearing a dark expression ever since her return. Being toyed with by her uncle had left her fuming. Soon enough, the team arrived at the scene of the chaos. The golems were already on a rampage. A group unable to escape was seconds away from being crushed to death. Just in time, Yu Yorna's whip lashed out. Seeing the opening, Park Sang-ho lunged forward and hurled his spear. In an instant, the golem was reduced to rubble. I finally arrived just as Chai Naeun locked onto her target. She made her move instantly. Facing the massive golem, Chai Naeun decided to test her skills with a sword. She knew its weakness from the briefing. She swung for the monster's ankle, but she was positioned far too close. The golem's speed was terrifying. Before she could strike, its massive fist slammed right into her abdomen. The sheer force sent her crashing into the dirt. Struggling to her feet, Chai Naeun couldn't believe it. These creatures were supposed to be slow, yet this one moved with lethal agility. And it wasn't finished yet. I shouted for her to dodge, but as a loud crash echoed. Without thinking, I had used ether to pull Chai Naeun to safety. It was pure instinct. I had to say something to avoid a misunderstanding. I quickly spoke up to break the tension. You should keep your distance next time. After all, can't your sword extend even further than a spear? Chai Naeun snapped back that she was just careless. Still, she whispered a quiet thanks. The reason she was groomed as a swordsman was her staggering mana capacity. It was dozens of times that of a normal hero. Her talent, the sea of mana, even surpassed Kim Soo-ho's reserves. With a sword as her medium, her power output was virtually limitless. By the time evening arrived, every last golem had been cleared. As the rescue team arrived, I felt a heavy gaze fixed on my back. Using thousand-mile eyes, I saw his face. His distinct features were unmistakable. Chai Naeun then called out for me to leave. I didn't linger. I only felt a pang of guilt, knowing that, in the original story, ether was supposed to belong to him. Later that night, Legina finally finished her work at the office. She picked up my report to give it a grade, but only a few moments after she started reading. Legina was left speechless. She never expected such quality. Yet the lack of a final analysis surprised her. She contacted me immediately, asking me to stop by the guild tomorrow. But now that I knew how they operated, I had no intention of going back. I sent a message to Park Sang-ho, but he kept pressing me for a reason. I decided to mess with Lee Jino a bit. A new main quest was approaching, and the wicked were moving again. Before that, Lee Jino reached out after finishing the report, inviting me back for another guild experience. Having already decided to decline, I chose to tease her. I sent Park Sang-ho my official reason for quitting. Someone had mocked me as a low-ranked parasite. Checking the logs, I knew Lee Jino was the culprit behind the post. Seeing my anger, Lee Jino panicked and tried to explain, swearing she never intended to look down on me. After hitting send, I could already picture Yu Yorna's fury raining down on Lee Jino over the mistake. It had been a long, exhausting day. Evangeline had already drifted off to sleep hours ago. I had one last task to complete while she was out. After tucking her in, I prepared for the final step. I pulled out the seedling powder I'd saved. Staring at the bag, I stood there in deep thought for a long time. This amount was more than enough. I carefully divided the precious powder into 3 equal portions. Kim Soo-ho and Rachel were important, but I had to look out for myself too. I couldn't let this chance pass. I planned to use my share tonight. My own potential was abysmal, so using it directly on my body was a waste. Instead, I would use it to upgrade the potential of ether. I slowly poured the glowing powder over it. Ether began to absorb the energy bit by bit. Now, I just had to wait, but then my watch buzzed with a new alert. I never expected Chai Naeun to reach out to me. She tried to express her gratitude for earlier, but after typing a single no, she suddenly went silent. I waited 10 minutes, wondering if there was more to her message, but the follow-up never arrived. When I finally prompted her for an answer, she seemed genuinely confused, so I simply told her to get some rest to end the awkward exchange. At first, that bizarre conversation felt like a total waste of my time, but then it hit me this was a sign that I'd finally transitioned from a nameless extra into a supporting character with a real role in this story. Meanwhile, Yu Yonha was still burning the midnight oil, buried under a mountain of tasks that never seemed to end, even late at night. Fed up with her lazy uncle, she decided to take matters into her own hands and establish her very own intelligence organization. Just as she finished drafting the recruitment notice, her phone rang with a call from China. It turned out Naeon was heading to an academic conference with Kim Soo-ho next Tuesday. No of Yeonha would join them. Yeonha was ready to decline until she heard mention of the dark brown step, instantly changing her mind and agreeing to go. Naeon had one more lingering concern. She asked if Yeonha had seen that viral video of her fighting the monster. Yeonha teased her mercilessly, admitting she saw every detail, including the part when Naeon collapsed right into Kim Hajin's arms. Flustered and panicked, Naeon immediately threatened Yeonha, swearing she'd never forgive her if that footage ever went public. After enjoying a good laugh at Naeon's expense, Yeonha hung up the phone, feeling quite satisfied. While Naeon agonized in her dorm over her exposed secret, Yeonha was already diving back into work when another notification arrived. She was shocked to learn that I had forfeited my guild experience, all because of some reckless comments made by Lee. Livid. Yeonha demanded Jinya answer her phone immediately, fuming that all her hard work to recruit Kim Hajin was being sabotaged. Thanks to all their intense focus on me, I ended up raking in a massive windfall of unexpected special points. I was confused by the sudden surge, but I wasn't about to complain about free points. My recent earnings were looking legendary. While waiting for my ether to fully manifest, I decided to dump all those points into my physical strength. I knew I'd eventually lag behind the others, so I focused every resource I had into maximizing my weapon's destructive power. I set to work crafting a brand new talent for myself. This talent could upgrade any gear I identified. Though random sounded risky, my top-tier luck stat made it a guaranteed gain. If this worked, it would be absolutely broken. I held my breath as I consumed my SP, hoping the setting would take hold. I slammed the confirm button, but a warning flashed. The overall quality of the talent began to plummet. But before despair could set in, my luck kicked into overdrive. The random enhancement talent was successfully finalized in a flash of light. The only drawback was that the maximum power ceiling had been lowered. I had to accept it. Considering how overpowered the effect was, simply succeeding was a win. I had to get stronger fast before the next main story arc began. 1 week of summer break had already vanished, spent entirely in the fires of my own personal, hellish training regime. I'd invested my SP into my weapons, but I didn't neglect my body. My ether seedling had finally awakened a mysterious spirit power. After countless hours of intense practice, I had finally achieved total and complete mastery over the flow of ether. This evolution didn't just feel good. It boosted my physical reinforcement stats by a solid 0.7. It also unlocked a new, detail-oriented function, allowing my manifested items to look and feel incredibly realistic. Since complex structures still took time to form, I decided to test my new power by manifesting a simple, sleek dagger. I examined the ether blade closely. From its weighted grip to its cold edge, it felt exactly like a real steel weapon. Once I triggered my random enhancement talent, even this small blade would become lethal enough to shatter mountains with ease. My tests confirmed it. This little dagger, appearance, that unassuming look, was its greatest advantage. It would cause any enemy to drop their guard instantly. Before I knew it, the day for our travel club's first official outing had finally arrived. I told Evangeline I was heading out, promising to bring back treats if she kept her ghost friends in animal form. I laid down the law, absolutely no turning into humans. A pouting Evangeline eventually agreed to follow my rules. I threw on the stylish coat Rachel had gifted me, gave Evangeline a final wave, and set off for the meeting point. Meanwhile, within the British palace, a butler named Henry assured Princess Rachel that she could finally rest easy. Following negotiations with the Cube, elite reinforcements were being dispatched to provide absolute protection at the training camp. Henry then inquired if the princess would allow the royal guild to personally contact mysterious man who had saved her life. Rachel gladly agreed. She knew my true strength far exceeded my current rank. Other guilds likely had their eyes on me, though the Wong family's guild wasn't top tier. They held early scouting rights, and Rachel wanted me for her own guild too. Oh Hon Hyen gathered everyone to depart for the kingdom of Pil. On the way, Chai Naeon was dying in the heat, wearing her full school uniform. She noticed me. She asked why I wore a jacket. I told her it regulates temperature perfectly. We arrived at Piland, amazed by the sights. Oh Hon Hyen introduced our final destination, the legendary Clancy Islet, a floating island held aloft by mysterious sky stones. Created from floating stones, it was a paradise where wealth and luxury collided. From Hostess auctions to corporate launches, it had everything the elite desired. The Golden Island of Peace. This is where the main story would truly begin. Kim Soo-ho asked if we'd visited before. Only Chai Naeun had been here. She'd visited at age 11 with her brother. Her excitement quickly turned to sorrow. Soo-ho asked her to lead the way. Naeun's energy returned in an instant. A massive event was scheduled for 7 p.m. Cube students were special guests. We were free to explore until then. Naeun immediately raised her hand to ask. Hearing that casinos were allowed, she dragged us toward the entertainment district. The place reeked of luxury. As the others went to gamble, I headed for reception. I waited for them to leave. The waitress was actually Jine in a perfect disguise. The chameleon circus was here. Every predator in the world wanted tonight's prize. I was thrilled. With my luck and eagle eyes, making money would be effortless. The story would trigger at 7. I had plenty of time to play. After winning a fortune, I spotted Chai Naeun. She was facing a man named Belt. Belt was a notorious swindler. He provoked Naeun by calling her a clueless brat. Enraged, she refused to leave. In the original plot, she loses everything today. She would cry alone in her hotel room. The game was rigged against her. Everyone at that table worked for Belt. It was a calculated trap for the rich. Belt was a significant villain. I sighed, watching Naeun play the perfect victim. I didn't care about her money. I just wanted one of Belt's specific treasures. I stepped forward, telling Naeun to move. I wouldn't let her lose any more. A henchman left to make room. Finally, I sat down at the high-stakes table. "Why don't you check your cards?" he asked. I didn't need to see them. Nearby, Jine reported to her leader. She worried I might have seen through her. Boss disagreed. He thought I'd need massive mana focus to pierce her veil. Jine agreed. She hadn't felt a single ripple of mana coming from my direction. The bets escalated rapidly. Soon, I was running low on chips for the next round. Belt eyed my ring. He sensed it was a magic item exactly as I planned. He asked what it was. I looked grim and refused to answer, acting suspicious. Naeun assumed it was my only family memento. She jumped up, trying to stop me. She didn't want me to lose a precious heirloom. I pulled her back down. "Just watch," I whispered. "I have no intention of losing." I played my hand. I bet the ring, but only if he wagered his bracelet too. Belt smirked. He thought his hand was unbeatable. He was wrong. Belt screamed, accusing me of cheating. Security cleared me, and Naeun mocked him relentlessly. I finally had the bracelet. It was a mana recovery relic. Belt had no idea what had just lost. Lu Yongsha is fuming at our late arrival, but she freezes the moment she sees my total makeover. Chai Naeun is now my personal bag carrier. As she explains our windfall, a mysterious man approaches, recognizing her instantly. Naeun is stunned by the encounter, while Lu Yongsha leans in to investigate the stranger. It's the famous hunter Kim Jun-woo from the Gwangwon Guild, clearly enjoying the spotlight. Our leader watches us from the shadows before quietly signaling Jing to move. Jane phases through the wall. The operation is a go, as I grip a simple hammer. That tool shatters the alloy door, powered by my random enhancement talent's terrifying strength. With a signal given, the chameleon troop begins their calculated strike on the island. Meanwhile, a massive crowd gathers on Clancy Island for the Rothan Group's grand gala. Everyone is here for one reason: to see the legendary white crystal in person. As the host builds the hype, a girl steps out, stealing everyone's breath away. Princess Rachel has arrived, looking radiant in her formal attire for tonight's event. Navigating a sea of media, she enters the hall and lets out a weary sigh. Rachel hates the noise, but Rothan's CEO Zelen immediately steps out to intercept her. Her mood sours as she professionally asks if their anti-demon security is actually ready. Zelen boasts that Clancy Island is currently the safest fortress on the planet. With high-rank heroes everywhere. As the Royal Guild's top sponsor, he promises to ensure their rise to the top. Zelen's sinister nature is barely hidden, leaving Rachel unsettled as guests take their seats. We slip inside as the countdown begins, but a nagging doubt clouds my mind. Why host this here? In my story's setting, Rothan is a den of pure corruption. No demons at the top, perhaps, but their leaders are monsters just as wicked. That crystal is a curse. And today, 3 major demons are set to crash the party. With Ned Hirosen and Kim Hyokyo coming, I'm nowhere near strong enough to fight. Stealing it is a pipe dream. I'll just watch how the other factions move. Suddenly, the boss approaches me, acting as a humble security hero, while we exchange greetings. But when Jane teases him about his crush over comms, the boss nearly snaps. I'm caught off guard by his outburst, watching his calm facade momentarily crack. He blames a noisy teammate, but I've heard everything. We continue our chat regardless. Kim Suho asks for an intro, so I feed him the boss's pre-planned cover story. After quick introductions, Kim Junwoo steps forward. He introduces himself politely, then questions how exactly the boss knows someone like me. He asks about the boss's organization, but the event starts. The crowd turns to the stage as the boss exits. Watching Junwoo's gaze, I can't help but wonder has he already figured us out? We continue chatting, while from across the room, Rachel finally spots me and my clothes. She's stunned. I wore her gift as Zelen unveils the night's ultimate prize. The white crystal pure condensed mana. Only 480 exist in the world. Zelen excitedly claims that until now, no one has harnessed its true potential. He promises that tonight, Rothan will reveal the secret to unlocking its godlike power. While the crowd cheers, Rachel's eyes scan the shadows. She notices unnatural figures, moving too dark and fluid. A sense of doom washes over her, but the packed hall makes any move dangerous. Just then, I stand up, my sudden movement drawing Rachel's sharp gaze. After the tour concluded, I chose to stay behind while the event was still in full swing. Rachel watched me leave, her expression clouded with suspicion at my sudden departure. She couldn't help but notice how I always seemed to appear at every crime scene, always carrying an aura that felt strangely out of place. Wary of the situation, Rachel dispatched her personal guards to infiltrate the hall and monitor suspicious individuals lingering in the crowd. Once her guards had departed, she slowly reached for her necklace. Activating the magical artifact, she vanished into perfect concealment, intent on tailing me. Meanwhile, back in the grand hall, a mysterious man was silently listening to his subordinates' report. Their reconnaissance confirmed that the Clancy Hall crystal was the genuine article. This man was none other than Kim Hyapayo of the Wicked Society. He watched Zelen's grandstanding on the stage with a cold, mocking smirk. Thinking the man was pathologically obsessed with wealth, Zelen intended to prove the item's authenticity to the VIPs and secure a massive windfall. Kim Hyapayo realized the Rotten Group's arrogance stemmed from their absolute confidence in the island's security. This was a floating fortress sustained by Manhwa. Portals were impossible to forge, and the only exit was under ironclad guard. But to Kim Hyapayo, these preparations were laughable. Today, they had mobilized their own fleet of aerial transporters for the heist. He signaled for the operation to commence. Elsewhere, I was steadily making my way toward the highest floor of the facility. Trailing me silently from the shadows, Rachel's curiosity piqued. She couldn't fathom what my true goal at the summit could possibly be. Eventually, I reached a set of massive double doors. Rachel wondered what I hoped to achieve on the rooftop. The doors required a key to open, and she expected me to give up in frustration. Instead, I produced a small, simple. The sight left the hidden Rachel completely stunned. Weapons were strictly banned on Clancy Island, yet ordinary tools were permitted. She doubted a mere hammer could shatter reinforced alloy. Until the sound of metal splintering filled the air, she was left speechless. Without using a single drop of mana, I had reduced the heavy iron doors to scrap with a common tool. Before she could recover, agonized screams. The main hall had instantly descended into absolute pandemonium. Guests were being slaughtered by djinns, and Zelen was seized by the Wicked Society. He never dreamed that these monsters would descend from the heavens. After seizing the white crystal, Ned offered a mockingly polite word of thanks to Zelen. But, as he turned to flee, a sudden, overwhelming sense of danger gripped him. In the next heartbeat, a violent explosion rocked the entire hall. The high-ranking hero Seong Shin was shocked the enemy hadn't just dodged his strike, but possessed the frustrating ability to create clones. He had expected the djinn to engage him in a direct, honorable confrontation. Instead, Ned commanded 8 clones to flee in different directions, leaving even a seasoned hero like Seong Shin completely bewildered. Forced to choose, the hero pursued one. From the shadows, the captain watched it all unfold. It wasn't just jinns. Countless monsters were now swarming the area. Kim Suho and Chai Naeun fought desperately to hold back the encroaching tide. Suddenly, a voice called out to them. Chai Naeun turned to see the hunter, Kim Ju. The hall had become a chaotic war zone, and they had been separated in the mayhem. Reunited. He'd looted it from a fallen jinn. While the battle raged below, I watched the entire scene from the rooftop. According to the original plot, Ned would split into 8 to escape. To the east, a hero was chasing a decoy. But that clone didn't carry the crystal. To the south, an ally disguised as a jinn followed. Only one pursuer was tracking the real target. The captain in the north. According to the manuscript, the crystal was held by the northern clone. However, the captain was soon intercepted by members of the Wicked Society. Surrounded by multiple jinns, he calmly raised his hand, releasing spheres of mana that drifted toward his enemies. The jinns laughed at the fragile-looking orbs, until the spheres began to ruthlessly devour them alive. Hearing the horrific screams, the remaining jinns realized they had provoked a monster. But escape was no longer an option. The captain's methods were disturbingly cruel. Ned watched in terror as his men were reduced to mere fragments. In a flash, the captain's attack connected. From my vantage point, on the roof, I witnessed the entire one-sided slaughter. Even though he was my own creation, the captain's power was undeniably terrifying. But just as I thought, the crystal would fall into the chameleon troop's hands, the Ned killed by the captain vanished. It was another clone. The captain was stunned. Certain his judgment had been flawless. This unexpected turn made me lose my cool. I immediately opened my laptop. I checked to see if the settings had changed, but there were no new alerts. This meant one thing. My previous interference had caused the story to diverge. Thinking frantically, I realized there was still one way to locate the crystal. I had never attempted it before, but there was no time left. I focused my stigma directly into my own eyes. I funneled every drop of mana into my eyes, pushing my clairvoyance to its absolute limit. Just as I suspected, with a mana boost, this ability was finally worthy of its name. I scoured the battlefield for 10 frantic seconds. The crystal was nowhere to be found, until a speeding car suddenly caught my attention. There it was. The crystal was inside. But my vision blurred instantly, as a stabbing pain. I realized I had hit my limit. As the author, I once fell in terror from a single villain's punch in this world. But now that the plot had shifted, I had to rely on my clairvoyance to track these dangerous changes. Using mana infused with my stigma, I finally pinpointed the white crystal. But the strain nearly blinded me. There was zero time to rest. I leaped down to the street, determined to intercept them before they vanished. I found a parked motorcycle and offered a silent apology to the owner before revving the engine. Tearing off, the battle was spilling out of the hall and onto the streets. Spotting her amidst the chaos of the crowd, I shouted her name to get her attention. A wave of monsters and jinns was closing in fast. She looked confused as I handed her the weapon. So I quickly explained the mana sword's power and told her to stay safe. I sped away before she could ask anything else. This was special gear stolen from Hagirius, and it held a secret. Its power scaled with the user's mana. In Naeun's hands, it would surely unleash a force far beyond any ordinary jinn. I forced my clairvoyance open once more while riding. Calculating their speed, I knew I was gaining on them. Minutes later, I saw the jinn's car. They were already signaling a transport plane for a mid-air extraction. They thought they were home free, but I slammed my bike right into them. The impact, sending their car flipping over. I caught my breath, having successfully halted their escape, but the threat was far from over. A jinn kicked his way out of the wreckage, completely unscathed and arrogant enough to declare my death sentence. As he signaled the transport plane for backup, I realized I needed an edge. I immediately pulled out my laptop. Tracking the plane's ID, I spent my points to rewrite its settings, forcing the aircraft to abort and return to base. The modification hit instantly. The jinn stood frozen in shock as his ride home simply turned around and vanished. With no more interference, I moved to take the crystal. Lethal whistle sliced through the air. Danger flared in my gut. A split second later, A terrifying explosion of mana obliterated the spot where the Jin stood. As the smoke cleared, the Jin was dead. Standing there was Qian Chiok, a deadly member of the chameleon troop. He was here for the crystal. My blood ran cold at his presence. My mind racing for a way to survive this encounter. Then I saw Etrashil was slumped over his shoulder. The situation had just gone from bad to catastrophic. I stealthily used ether to snatch the crystal from the ground. Chihook's eyes narrowed, ordering me to drop it. I demanded he release Rachel first. Only then did the elite warrior realize it was the girl I was after. He'd assumed she was just another hunter after the crystal and brought her along. He looked at me with curiosity. He asked if this girl was truly that important to me. A sadistic glint appearing in his eyes as he toyed with us. He challenged me to a test. His speed in snapping her neck. I remained cold. I told him if he didn't release her, he'd never get what he wanted. He didn't expect me to be so defiant. He threw Rachel to the dirt like trash and demanded the item. I kept my word and tossed him the case. I couldn't handle the crystal's power anyway. Ideally, I would have given it to Rachel to secure her royal status. But under these circumstances, the crystal was nothing more than a bargaining chip to save her life. I wondered how she'd been caught, but before I could ask, Chiyook lunged at me with blinding speed. It happened in the blink of an eye. I couldn't even react as his fist whistled toward me with lethal force. To my total shock, his punch stopped inches away. Chiyook looked genuinely surprised by my reaction. He laughed and called me interesting. In his eyes, I was fearless for not even blinking at his deadly strike. He realized I had been tracking his movements from the start, a trait he'd clearly respected in a warrior. He pulled back his fist, remarking that perhaps I wasn't such a lost cause after all. He turned to leave, expressing his admiration for my guts. I stayed silent until I was certain he was gone. The moment he vanished, my legs gave out. I collapsed to the ground, having never been so close to death. Kihi's strike was a total blur. If he'd been even slightly displeased with me, my head would have been rolling on the floor. I barely escaped death, just as Rachel finally regained consciousness. Her first instinct was to ask about the enemy, but I told her they'd already vanished. Rachel looked utterly lost, so I explained everything. I then asked if she was also hunting the crystals. To my surprise, she'd been following me. She pulled out a bullet casing, asking if it belonged to me. She found it during the final exams. I recognized it instantly as the shell from my long-range snipe, and admitted it was mine. But when I reached for it, Rachel quickly pulled it back. She tucked it away in her pocket. She had followed me, fearing I'd be targeted by Jins like she was. However, the enemies were stronger than anticipated. Rachel felt crushed, believing she'd been completely useless. After a heavy silence, she couldn't help but ask, why did I save her? While one time might be luck, the final exam felt different. She could sense it. I had been watching over her since the moment we stepped off the ship. I couldn't tell her the truth, so I made a snap decision and told her, because I'm your fan. She was stunned. To make it convincing, I even showed proof of my membership in her official fan club. It was a flimsy lie, but better than saying, you're a main character in a novel. Rachel fell into deep thought before slowly murmuring, does that mean you like me? Hearing her counter-question, it was my turn to be speechless. Soon, the Jins and monsters outside the hall were cleared. Surveying the ruined building, Yu Yonhe sighed in despair. Suddenly, Chai Neon rushed up, asking if she'd seen him. Confused by the vague question, Yonhe recalled the many incredible things she'd witnessed during the chaos. Most notable were the hunter Kim Jun, who demolished everything. Suho parried every attack with ease. But Chai Neon was the real shocker. Using the mana sword I gave her, she became a goddess of destruction on the battlefield. She clearly loved that sword. However, when Nahon clarified, she meant Kim Hajin. Like Nahon, she'd seen me roar away on a motorcycle. While they wondered where I'd gone, Kim Suho arrived with urgent news. Nahon realized then that she hadn't seen Rachel since the fight began. Yonha suspected the Jin's true target was Rachel all along. Indeed, using Rachel as a hostage could force the transfer of Clancy Islet to their control. Thinking of this, Yonha cursed the Jin Association for their sheer ruthlessness. Just then, a motorcycle appeared in the distance. The rider was none other than the missing Rachel. Everyone sighed in relief, seeing her safe. But Chai Neon's eyes narrowed. That was the same bike Kim Ha-jin had been riding earlier. Yonha realized that while everyone else was blinded by the chaos, I had raced off and Rachel had returned with my vehicle. Did I take down a Jin alone and rescue her? She found the possibility almost impossible to believe. After all, the Jins had elite ranks. Meanwhile, I was exhausted and ready for bed as this main arc ended. A new semester began. Thanks to my high scores, Evangeline and I moved into a fresh dormitory. After saving Rachel, I'd sent her back on the bike while I disappeared to recover. The next evening, a group dinner was planned. I arrived to find only Chai Nayeon waiting. I was late, the others were already at the restaurant. Nayeon urged me to hurry up. It was her treat tonight. I found it strange had something wonderful happened to her. After walking a bit, she stopped, her face tight with a strange, nervous energy. She called my name. She had one question. Can't we just ... be friends? Her words caught me off guard. But after a moment of heavy reflection, I told her. She clenched her fists, hiding her hurt by claiming she was just joking. She accused me of looking down on her. As she stormed off in a rage, I stood there in silence. We truly can never be friends. I'm destined to leave this world eventually, and to do so, I must kill his closest kin. Better to remain a loner. If we become friends, the eventual parting will only cause him more pain. Another day faded into the past. And we returned to the cube. The moment I arrived, Evangeline came running to welcome me back, bouncing with joy as she asked for snacks. Her eyes sparkled once she received the 2 boxes of fried chicken. She beamed and thanked me profusely. Seeing her happy gave me a rare sense of peace in this world. With food in her belly, Evangeline should stay quiet for now. Only 3 days of vacation remain, and I need to finish my preparations. First, I'll sync my Opening my laptop during every crisis is too slow. I had been hoarding SP points, but after the unexpected encounter with Chin Lianjing, I finally gathered enough SP. As my remaining points are consumed, my watch will allow for instant modifications. With that settled, only one crucial task remains. Upon returning, I contacted Park Soo-hyuk to secure a motorcycle. By now, Soo-hyuk found a high-performance machine. I told him to go for the top-tier specs. He was stunned by the price. Since the premium model is incredibly expensive, but once I confirmed, he promised to finalize it immediately. I made a fortune on Clarence Island, so the cost is nothing. Plus, the boss of exorcism is targeting X City. And once those dungeons are cleared, my stock portfolio is going to skyrocket. The thought of all that gold made me smile. On the 4th day, summer break officially ended. Back on campus, everyone was buzzing about social media. It hit me then that I hadn't checked the main casts. I used to follow them religiously. Shin Jong-hak's posts were predictably vain. Either posing for the camera or flexing his workout routine. He gets thousands of likes, but honestly, it just makes me want to gag. Kim Soo-ho and Yoo Yeon-ha barely post, while Rachel's account is strictly royal business. Chai Nayeon's last update was from the island. It looks like my rejection left a deep scar, but she's strong, she'll overcome it alone. A quick scan showed everything else was normal. During class, the instructor announced the start of the 2nd semester. Rankings would fluctuate, and a wave of transfer students would arrive. These elites came from the mainland's top 10 magic academies, powerful mages seeking to become heroes. They were funneled into the cube, 20 students per class. 200 mages in total. I already knew the important ones. Then, the instructor signaled them to enter. As I scanned the new faces in our class, one specific person made my heart drop. I was stunned. He was the original owner of Ether from the novel. Despite the different hair and skin, there was no mistaking that face. My watch confirmed the setting change. The other author decided that Toma's original entrance was too forced and his strength unexplained. Now, he's appearing early, to build a bond with the protagonists. This just adds more trouble to my plate. Toma isn't exactly the social type. With the new term starting, I first moved into my new dorm. Evangeline was thrilled when she saw the luxury suite. The room was massive, providing her with the comfort she deserves. I only got this place because my rank improved. In Cube, status dictates your living conditions. I'm currently mid-rank, which is perfect. My old room was so small, I feared she'd feel trapped. As for Tom, I'll have to plan carefully. The first class was field training, designed to integrate the original students with the transfers. The school dubbed the mission the perilous mountain trek. No monsters were present, but the terrain was packed with traps. The instructor warned that one mistake would mean a hospital bed. We were split into groups of 12. Once the order was given, all the students surged into the mountains. As we went deeper, the sky darkened and the temperature plummeted. Kim Soo-ho told everyone to stay sharp. If the warnings were accurate, danger was everywhere. But right as he finished his sentence, a transfer mage triggered a trap. Soo-ho and the others reacted instantly, but the snares were too fast, hoisting several students into the air. Once we cut them down, Chae-nayeon prepared to move the group forward. But then, suddenly, a ghost-like creature materialized. In an instant, Chae-nayeon and Kim Soo-ho were fleeing in pure terror. Only after reaching the perimeter did they collapse in exhaustion, still haunted by the terrifying female specter. Once they caught their breath, Soo-ho and Nayeon exchanged praises. But suddenly, a realization struck Chae-nayeon. She cautiously asked Kim Soo-ho if they were truly friends. Soo-ho replied of course without a second thought. He wondered why she'd ask something so obvious. Nayeon realized that Soo-ho's reaction was the only normal one. But I had claimed we couldn't be friends, she wondered. Did Kim Ha-jin want to cross that line? Was he seeking a deeper intimacy? Her face flushed red. Right then, I happened to spot them nearby. Soon, both teams began exchanging information. Our highest-ranked members were Lee Ji-yoon at 20 and Derek at 40. Derek explained they were trapped in a phantom barrier. Until Kim Ha-jin stepped up to lead the way. At first, he doubted my directions. To his shock, I accurately guided them straight to the hidden exit. The conversation shifted toward the second semester's team activities, and they questioned Soo-ho and Nayeon about their plans. Neither had picked a partner yet. Lee Ji-yoon then mentioned he was considering teaming up with Kim Ha. Since teams are formed based on grades, Ji-yoon figured Ha-jin was the best choice among the lower-ranked cadets. His words caught both Chae-nayeon and Derek completely off guard, leaving them speechless with surprise. For some reason, Chae-nayeon suddenly protested, claiming Ha-jin was far too cold and overly picky. She actively discouraged Ji-yoon. She couldn't understand why she was trying to gatekeep him. Seizing the chance to criticize me, Derek joined in, mentioning several dark rumors surrounding my recent behavior. He claimed I frequently left Cube for hedonistic pleasures, causing Nayeon and Soo-ho's expressions to darken instantly. Derek pushed further, accusing me of taking bribes from syndicates. This finally pushed Chae-nayeon over the edge. Did you see any of this with your own eyes? She demanded. Derry recoiled, stammering a weak no. Kim Soo-ho firmly backed her up, warning Derek not to spread lies without any concrete proof. He declared his trust in my character. With the tension high, Soo-ho ended the break to resume training. The group continued their grueling mountain ascent until nightfall finally signaled the end of the day's session. Elsewhere, Yu Yong-ha finalized her gear's transformation effects. Prepared disguise for the night. Tonight marked the inaugural meeting of Falling Blossoms, an information guild separate from the main Essence faction. Membership was strictly reserved for those destined to be her direct subordinates. After months of preparation, Yu Yong-ha had finally secured her core team. Every member present felt the electric thrill of this first gathering. Yong-ha then unveiled her grand vision, revealing that Falling Blossoms would operate through 3 specialized divisions. Team 1 would infiltrate rivals to steal intelligence, targeting the strategic plans of the nation's top guilds. Team 2's mission was scouting new dungeons and locating elusive high-tier monsters before anyone else could. Finally, Team 3 was born for the shadows, tasked with covert operations like sensitive investigations and kidnappings. When necessary, they would even act as executioners. They were the guild's lethal hidden blades. Yong-ha issued their first mission: investigate the pasts of 5 individuals without leaving a single trace behind. With the orders delivered, the meeting concluded. While 5 were listed, the background checks were mostly fluff. Yu Yong-ha had only one true target. She needed to uncover the secret of what happened in my past. My first clash with Kim Soo-ho ended in victory. I had earned his respect. Meanwhile, as training concluded, Yu Yong-ha's secret organization was officially operational. The next morning, I woke to find Evangeline had sneaked into my room. I didn't want to wake her, so I gently patted her head and quietly headed out. My kitten woke up then. It wasn't a mere phantom, but a physical entity created by Evangeline's power. Though it's just cute now, I knew this creature would eventually become a powerful asset by my side. Feeling satisfied, I headed toward the cafeteria. On the way, a voice suddenly called out my name. It was Yonha, fresh from her workout. She asked where I was going, and decided to join me. As we walked, she pressed me again about my future plans, sensing the urgency of our situation. With only a year left before becoming intern heroes, she warned me that my time was running out. Yonha approached me once again, extending a formal invitation to join the prestigious Essence of the Straight Guild. My instructors often say that entering her guild is practically a guaranteed ticket to the Hall of Fame. However, my heart was already set elsewhere. So I politely declined and told her I was more interested in the Great Range Hunter Guild. Surprisingly, she didn't get angry, but instead vowed with absolute confidence that she would eventually change my mind. She claimed that once she brought back the specific item I've been searching for, my perspective would surely shift. I was left utterly stunned, having no clue what she was referring to, and she refused to give me any further details. We chatted all the way to the cafeteria, where she casually mentioned that Li Gina had finally received her punishment. Class started right after lunch, but my mind was elsewhere. He was busy tracking Kim Soo, who seemed ready to conquer a dungeon. According to the original novel, Kim Soo-ho was supposed to be drawn to Mount Jiaokork. There, he would discover a hidden dungeon containing a weapon of immense legendary power. But that weapon requires seedling powder to fully awaken. That powder is currently in my possession. With another author interfering in this world, there's a high chance the dungeon's layout has shifted unexpectedly. For Kim Soo-ho's safety, I have to follow him. I know all too well how much this world's destiny favors him. Besides, I might just be able to snatch some extra loot for myself. Before I knew it, the day's lessons had ended. I planned to devise a strategy against Homa before the dungeon raid, but it looks like that will have to wait. She hasn't fully sided with the Jinns yet, so if I can find her father, there's still a chance to bring her to our side. Toma's entire existence is driven by a single goal: finding her missing father and killing him with her own hands. The problem is, I have no idea where he's hiding, since the original book never specified his exact location. My mana is too low to get clear answers from the Book of Truth, and I've ruled out seeking help from you. He mainly handles domestic intelligence, while Toma's father is likely abroad, far beyond his reach. Then it hit me: there is one person who can help. Kim Chundong's only friend, and a top graduate in military intelligence. I called Kim Ho-jil that night. It took him a moment to realize it was me on the other end of the line. We hadn't spoken since the entrance ceremony, but I didn't waste any time and got straight to the point. I offered him a substantial reward if he could use his skills to track down a specific individual for me. Kim Ho-jil agreed, though he spoke in a strained, hushed whisper. Just as I was about to hang up, I paused. I asked if his boss was giving him a hard time, which left him baffled as to how I could have possibly known. I guessed it from his secretive tone, so I told him that if he was thinking of quitting, I had an offer. I could recommend him to a guild where his talents would be properly recognized and rewarded with top-tier benefits. I told him the name of the place was Falling Blossoms. After the call ended, I smiled. I couldn't help but think that Yonha owes me a huge favor for handing her such a brilliant talent on a silver platter. Late that night, I found Kim Soo-ho training alone. His swordsmanship had already reached a level of terrifying perfection. Suddenly, he stopped mid. Realizing I'd been spotted, I stepped out from the shadows to greet him. Only then did he lower his training sword. It was impressive to see him working this hard. I decided to test the waters, teasingly, asking if he was training so intensely to solo a dungeon. Kim Soo-ho told me not to joke around, but his expression changed instantly when I mentioned Mount Joke. He was shocked. I knew his destination, but I told him not to worry. I just happened to spot him while I was out. I reminded him that my eyes are sharper than most. Then, I revealed my true motive. I wanted him to take me along. I told him I'd only take 10% of the rewards and a few leaves would suffice. Seeing my complete honesty, Kim Soo-ho admitted he had indeed discovered a hidden dungeon just last week. He had intended to go alone, but I warned him that a solo raid would be recklessly dangerous, regardless of his skill. He agreed it was risky, yet he made it clear that trusting someone to watch his back, completely different matter. He shed his outer coat, his eyes turning sharp. He wanted to personally verify if I was someone he could truly rely on. He asked if I would undergo a simple test. This sudden development was something I hadn't anticipated at all. The power gap between us was massive. Even if he used one hand, I wasn't sure I could win. I argued that open ground favored him. I pointed out that a spar was unfair without my specialized gear, but he didn't care about my weapons, he just wanted to see my resolve. With no other choice, I accepted the challenge. It was clear he'd been itching for this duel for ages. I racked my brain for a Even with a wooden sword, simple monocoded bullets wouldn't stop Kim Soo-ho. A direct confrontation meant certain defeat and a loss of favor. To earn his respect, I needed a different play. I needed a trick. Looking at the jacket he'd tossed aside, a brilliant plan finally began to take shape. As Soo-ho waited for my signal, I seized the moment to stealthily rewrite the reality. Battlefield. Seconds later, the code was set. "I'm ready," I declared. With a sharp nod, the duel ignited. Before I could breathe, Soo-ho vanished, reappearing inches from my face. I instantly triggered bullet time to survive. The world slowed, allowing me to track his blade's path and narrowly evade. But Soo-ho effortlessly transitioned his grip. He stayed on me like a shadow. Even with my enhanced vision, his sheer speed drew first blood. I couldn't stay on the defensive if I wanted his recognition. I drew my weapon and unleashed a decisive volley. His reflexes were inhuman. With a mere tilt of his frame, he danced through the line of fire. That momentary gap was my only lifeline. Even with bullet time, I was barely keeping my head attached. I had to end this fast. Once my skill duration hit 0, I'd be completely at his mercy. I began luring him, step by calculated step, but as I aimed my next shot, he flickered behind me, like a ghost. Caught off guard, I fired my grappling hook in a frantic bid for distance. The cable yanked me toward a nearby tree. A millisecond later, and it would have been over. That strike was meant to end it. Soo-ho hadn't pulled a single punch, yet he seemed unfazed by my escape. "Impressive," he noted. "But you're backed into a corner." He watched, waiting to see how I'd respond. I was betting everything on one variable. His foot landing on that discarded jacket. The next moment, my gamble paid off. The trap exploded into action, launching the legendary Soo-ho into the air. He crashed into the dirt, stunned. Victory was mine. By rewriting the jacket's properties into a high-pressure trap, designed to repel anything it touched, once the trap had done its job, Soo-ho stood up, gracefully conceding the match. Soo-ho bluntly admitted defeat, staring at me with an intensity that felt like he was peering into my soul. After a heavy silence, a grin broke across his face. He officially welcomed me to join the Demon Lair raid. Relief washed over me, as I promised to watch his back. Meanwhile, in an abandoned factory in City, Ki Jumping winced as he shattered a priceless relic. Delonja smirked, telling him the sacrifice was necessary. "With Imperial technology, we'll double our profits," Delon promised. Holding up a glowing white crystal, a blinding light erupted, bathing the shards of the broken artifact in a divine, restorative glow. Under the crystal's power, the shards didn't just mend. Each individual piece duplicated into a perfect, whole relic. The process was complete. Delon admired the hall. A massive arsenal of high-tier replicas, born from mere fragments. The crystal alone was a factory. Initial tests proved these replicas far outclassed any standard low-level gear. A single relic could yield 30 high-performance blades, each pulsing with terrifying magical power. With the crystal's energy, they could forge 600 more. At 70 million each, the potential wealth was staggering. They were looking at an absolute fortune. The group watched in awe, fully convinced of Delon's genius. But wealth wasn't the only goal. News arrived that the Lord of Demon Slaying had begun raiding City X's lair. The legendary hunter was now in their sights. The captain turned to the chameleon group with a cold grin. Their new objective was clear. Hunt the hunter and plunder everything the Lord of Demon Slaying possessed.